Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting on this Monday, October the 4th, 2021. It's approximately 7:02 p.m. Ms. Derry, would you call the roll for us, please?
Yes. Wes Terry. Rob Powell's absent. Daniel.
Here.
Ralph Eager.
Here.
Tim Terry.
Here.
Casey Brown.
Here.
There's four.
Thank you. If everyone would rise, please, at this time we would ask the pastor of Greenwood Assembly, Pastor Miller, to lead us in prayer, followed by the pledge of Chief Will Dawson.
We thank you for the opportunity we have to pray at a meeting like this, because there are many cities in America that won't allow something like this to happen, but we do here because we know how important it is to have you be a part of our city and a part of our lives. So we ask now for the wisdom that will be come forth, Lord, in each and every one of us, and from you to know exactly what decisions need to be made for all the things that are on the agenda, and you know what they are. So right now, we commit this meeting into your hands. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Pastor. At this time, I would ask the consideration of the council to approve the minutes for the August 2nd, 2021 regular council meeting.
I'd like that motion, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Wes Terry. Daniel.
Yes.
Mr. Eager.
Yes.
Tim Terry.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
And
Thank you. Next on the agenda is recognitions and acknowledgments. We have lots of not new folks in the audience, but we appreciate everybody coming, so I'm recognizing you and acknowledging you. We have no keys to the city to give out, but unless you want one, John, I don't know.
No.
Okay, so we'll move on. Committee reports. I believe we're in pretty good shape on some of those being issued via email. No one's here from the Wood Hills Club, SRCA, Parks Commission, Chair's not here. If you want to, okay, we're good. Water Wastewater Commission, Mr. Bailey, I don't see in the audience. So again, as I say, every month, if you have questions in regard to those reports, or if you don't see one, let me know, or let Danielle know, and we'll get that to you. Citizen forum, no one has signed up this evening, so we'll move on from that. Financial report, Mr. Tom Marsh.
Okay, you should have received it by email, but I'll give you some of the highlights. The city sales and use tax growth that we budgeted was 10%. The cumulative growth so far 2021 is 12%. We're 2% above budget on the city sales and use tax for the 9-month collections. County sales tax budgeted growth is 5.6%. Our cumulative growth, however, in 2021 is 14%. So the county sales tax is 9.6% above budget. And the last that we indicated that we looked at is the A&P budgeted growth. We budgeted 8% for the year. Right now, our cumulative growth is 11.79%. So the A&P is 3.79% above budget. And since 2018 through current 2021, we're 44.11% increase in prepared food sales. That's the gross sales for all A&P related entities that report to the city in that 4-year period. So A&P prepared food sales has grown 44% in 4 years. If you look at page 16, if you have an opportunity, and it's up on your screen, otherwise when you get a chance, I gave you a different report, which is basically a financial report, which is showing net income by month. So you'll be seeing that by how profitable each months have been. I can do this for any year now. One of the things I wanted to report is that our net income year to date, all in the city, is $2,745,721. However, that was influenced by the extraordinary item, which is the ARPA money of $972,000. So the adjusted net income when you remove the extraordinary item, is $1,773,066. Our budgeted net loss, however, for this year was $2,360,000. So we're right now in a favorable budget variance of $4,133,873. And as sure as shooting as I say that, there'll be a lot of expenditures in the last quarter that will come in because this is as of 9/30. I will let you know, however, and in looking at the next report, which breaks out each department and how, whether they're in a surplus or a deficit situation compared to budget, currently all operating departments are performing at or better than the budgeted surplus deficit for the first 9 months. So every department is in a favorable situation right now. That is a key operating department. Page 31 of your report is your statement of cash flows. The net increase in cash for 9/29 of 2021 was $166,254. So our total cash fund right now, as it stands in the bank for 9/30, is $15,799,000, and you get a breakout on pages 32 and 33, the last 2 pages of your report, showing each of the individual accounts, whether they're virtual or actual funds, checking accounts, and what the balances are, both restricted and unrestricted ones. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments from Mr. Marsh? Looking for a great report, as always. Okay, here's bad news, agenda addition, so we're going to try to keep going through it if we can, because we're actually going to have it. We've only got 10, 11, 12, by the time we get through here. So, leave number 10 will be police overtime. That's what we're calling it. Discussion. And I did not write down my 11. The 11 one. The one, number 11?
Yeah,
I don't know. Who's doing that? Are you got one? I'm sorry, Mr. Bell had
I
it.
know about yours, but
Sure.
what are you?
Is it, am I number 11?
Do you- Number 11.
Number 11, I want to put on the agenda an ordinance repealing, replacing ordinance 1201, establishing a flood damage prevention program.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. 1201, right? Yep. All right, thank you, sir. Council, approve that, okay? And that,
There's something else.
was there not another one? We're not going to add, where did Mr. Hunter go?
Oh, this is
Yeah, we're not going to add that tonight, I think, after visiting with Mr. Hinker. Okay. So maybe 11. Okay. Not missing anything? Okay. Old business, number 1, Water Wastewater Commission ordinance amending ordinance 14-09, allowing stipend for commission members, 3rd reading. Anybody, there's no one here to actually speak on that. So, it's the same one we've had, again, it's for the 3rd reading. What number is it? That's number 3, or I have listed as number 3, no, I don't.
Mayor, make a motion to place it on 3rd reading by title only.
Have a motion second, please. Thank you.
Wastewater. Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Terry.
No.
Mr. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Passes by majority. I'll read the title. An ordinance amending ordinance 14-09, providing stipend for water wastewater commission members of the city of Greenwood, Arkansas for other purposes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
This will be effective 30 days past the publication date. It should be published next week, and then it will go over 30 days thereafter.
Thank you. Number 2, new business, city attorney, 2022. I got to say it because I've done it every year since I've been in office, mileage, and then I'll correct myself, millage, ordinance, emergency passage.
actually. I think the Charlotte lady here,
Okay.
puts it together every year for us, but this is where we renew annually the millage so that we can receive our money to study. So this is just a housekeeping matter we do every single year.
Make a motion to pass this ordinance by title only. Second.
And motion second to pass ordinance by title only.
Third on first reading by title only?
First.
Absolutely, let's put on first reading by title only.
That's a good idea.
Who's second?
I believe, Mr. Green.
Ms. Terry? Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
It's unanimous. An ordinance assessing a 5.0 mill tax on real and personal property within the corporate limits of the city of Greenwood, Arkansas for the year 2022, declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
Make a motion to suspend the rules, waive second, third reading. Second.
Motion second.
Yeah.
Mr. Lance Terry? Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Meeker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Motion second to adopt.
Mr. Terry? Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Meeker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion to enact emergency clause.
Motion second to enact emergency clause.
Ms. Terry?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Meeker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Number 3, water wastewater amendment to ordinance number 492, establishing a $500 sewer tie-on fee, first reading. This ordinance comes back to you from the Water Wastewater Commission, and I really was hoping somebody could be here from there, but they're not. So, I know Mr. Posey's here, you want to speak on it? Anybody? But anyway, so you have it, hopefully, if you haven't read it, take the time to read it, and this is their version, if you will, of what, the county, something was presented to you last month about this, there was some discussion, we tabled it, right?
Yes.
And the commission met again, had discussion, and this is what they brought it as an idea for you to consider. In lieu of the initial idea.
If you have any questions, I think Tom could really explain it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I could too, but
Last week, or last month, we talked about, this thing was put in back in the 90s, and they were wanting to get rid of it, but then it turns out they found out about a bunch of upgrades that may have to happen, so we were kind of like, okay, we may need this $500. So it looks like now they're going back in with the $500, but I keep seeing where it's going to be reimbursed upon construction.
Completion of each phase,
Yeah.
not phase, each
I'm
house.
sorry, each house is what they're recommending.
Like, not just in a subdivision, every
Right.
house in
Any
the
structure.
construction for residential.
Mr. Brown, you did not attend that meeting, did you?
No.
Okay, I think you made it. Tim, you want to come up?
Not
Mr.
necessarily.
Posey, I'm sorry. Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer those.
I mean, great.
Great, it's way
Mr. Cross was there. Neither one of you want to come up, but
We're here, I'm answering questions.
that's the essence of it. Tom, you want to chime?
Originally, when you decided about the money for what it was going to cost for lift stations, that became a moot point when we talked about at the commission meeting some additional funding that we have access to. They're not hurting for cash for doing these renovations and these critical infrastructure development that they're going to need to do. But a question was posed at the last city council meeting that said, what we're really concerned about is you start going in, doing a development, and then the development decides it's not advantageous for them or financially feasible, and they abandon the project. And here we already conceded and gave up to everyone the $500 tie-in or the $500 impact fee, as you were calling it. And then what was decided was that if you could rebate it back to them upon successful completion and a certificate of occupancy or a good inspection for the building, they were happy with that, and we said, let's put it back to the Water Wastewater Commission and let them decide if that's something they would like to do. And they thought that was a very reasonable stand on it. In other words, we're going to collect the water taps, we're going to control the water taps, we're going to collect the sewer tap, and we're going to control the sewer tap. And then when they successfully finish their project, they get the $500 impact fee in return. So it's an incentive for them to develop, as they say they're going to. So that's what's put in front of you right now.
Also warned from this, I was in the meeting myself, talked quite a bit, preached, if you will, about how important this subdivision, along with all subdivisions, and all consideration of construction. And I can go into my sermon with you, but you already heard it, I think, is that we need to be prepared. And I will elaborate just for a second that I met again with Mayor McGill, Mayor Gaddis, Barling, Fort Smith, and Tim Allen, Chamber Director Fort Smith, about, and I got some very specific details that I cannot share with you at this time about what the impact is going to be of the 188th new training. And it's huge, period. There's a lot of stuff. So are they coming? They're coming. And we need to be prepared for it. Housing, this is going to be built out whether we do this or not. I mean, I think you're probably thinking that. I'm hoping Mr. Roy is going to build this out. He's here tonight. But so the consideration of the commission, whether my speech did any good or not, was to at least have something to give back or to promote anybody from coming into Greenwood, whether you're building one house or 251 houses, and to get stuff rolling and get us prepared for not just that 188th, but everything. But it was, when I left the meeting, it was not necessarily considered down to one house, but they decided that later, which I understand because, as you know, if you don't know, Judge Parker is on this commission, and he is always concerned, as he should be, as we all should be, about doing fair across the board. So how do you determine if it's, you get a break of 2 houses or 10 houses or 251 houses? So I think the commission had some discussion and said, let's offer it for everybody.
It was always done per house. The 500 was put on there way before we built the plant. And
But I'm talking about the rebate.
right, there was $350 for the tap fee, and then we had a $500 tie-in fee for the pressure it was putting on the ponds at the time, because that's what we had, and just anything that came in, we had the $500, and it was a good thing at the time. Right now, we've got to win some sales tax. So we don't necessarily need it. It is for the pressure you put on the plant when you're coming in, but I would rather have more houses and more people building.
Sure. And I believe, and again, I left before the vote was taken on this, briefing coming back to you. The one prior to this was passed, not unanimous. One outstanding, this one was unanimous, correct? The second bringing this one back, the rebate.
Yeah.
Okay, so unanimous by the commission. Yes, sir.
Could I add that it was at the completion of a phase, in other words, they wouldn't have to do the whole 251 houses.
Right, that's correct.
I think the first phase was 71.
It's for each house, but they don't get the rebate until the phase.
That's not what I gathered from Wayne Rob's world record long motion.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and he has said in there, I could read it to you.
I believe you.
I highlighted 3 or 4 areas where he states each house. Let it finish.
Yeah, that's not how I got it. I think it was what they can phase.
You want to hear the motion?
Well, I'm okay putting this on the first read tonight, but for that very reason.
Yeah.
We need to go back. I mean, the second whereas of this says all new residential home construction. The third whereas says all new residential home construction. Section 1 says on all new construction in the city limits. That third whereas is confusing to me. I mean, it's talking about regardless of the number of housing units that are to be built by said AE. That seems like one of these things, 5 years from now, we're all going to be arguing about what that meant. What did we mean to do?
It doesn't agree.
You need to know for sure before you vote. I didn't expect to vote on this tonight.
I would want this to be
passed.
I mean, 1 week from the meeting, not sure what we meant. So that needs to be very clearly defined.
Well, I will say on clerk, and I'm not arguing with Mr. Posey, I left before that became I will certainly say whatever is on the record, because she has recordings, that she can write down what they say. Now, whether they meant it that way is a good,
I did it verbatim because it was so long and so repetitive. It was
you got,
motion.
so I agree. I would appreciate if you could put it on for first reading and let those facts come back.
I just, as it went around the room, the intent I gathered, now, I believe you on the verbiage that was spoken, was kind of a long thing, but what I gathered, because they didn't want to make it for the whole subdivision, but they did want to make it because they talked about the infrastructure being put in as per city specifications.
Right.
And that has to come, that has to be finished before,
Well,
The tap fee, though, is, I mean, regardless of it, whether it's one home or 200 homes, it's a tap fee per each, right?
Well, yeah.
So I think if this is written that it's a per tap fee, per tap, it's per tap reimbursed when everything is signed off by the city.
I think that's the intent.
We don't care
Yeah.
whether it's 2 houses or 200 houses.
Because that was a lot of discussion, again, before I left, let's be fair to the guy that's building one home, as we're fair to the guy that's building 200. And by the way, I have to correct press, it's 251, am I not right?
Right.
Not 250.
I'll make a motion, we place it on its first reading with corrections to be made.
And what are those corrections again, or is there thing just to get more?
I think more information, nothing that we know yet.
Well, we want to clarify residential. Is it residential and commercial, or is it just residential? And I think there's some, fuzzy language there, it makes it fuzzy to think about. I mean, regardless of the number of houses. So, I'd be very specific about per tap.
So a motion to put it on for first reading with further discussion, information coming back from the Water Wastewater Commission.
Yeah, because on the second whereas it says sewer lines.
Yep. A rewritten ordinance for you guys to look at.
Does that not fall in the table department?
Sir?
Does that not fall into the table department?
I think so, yeah.
Like,
Just
table,
table
table,
it, you know, just-
It's
right.
doesn't matter, yeah.
The only, whatever you desire to do, technically, I suppose it does because it becomes back complete. I don't know. They're expecting some changing of language in it
Yes.
to identify what is right.
You just make modifications, have it back on the reading.
He's saying you can do first reading.
That's
and
what
go
he
You
did.
do
directly-
first reading, and then the next month it may,
Come back
you
different.
may have 7 sections.
That's why you had 3
That's
readings.
why you have 3 readings.
Or you can take one.
I already did a motion, I just.
Yeah,
We'll first and second to bring it
I didn't
back.
hear second.
Mr. Terry.
Did you do it?
Here's another thing. I have another thing, guys.
Yes, sir.
The first whereas, I'm confused. So you got the title that we're amending ordinance 492. The first whereas says, you got this thing 1993 to amend ordinance 423 for,
That's because ordinance 492 amended 423.
right. 492 amended 423, and we're about to create whatever number this is that amended that, that amended that.
Mhm.
So it might be worth repeal and replace
It would.
and get rid of all these amendments.
I like it. I thought about it at the time.
We're creating a paper trail.
Yeah,
So
it's,
to be addressed at the second reading, to repeal, or you want to recommend that now?
you want to recommend this repeals and replaces all of that? Or next?
I think so. I think I agree with Mr. Terry. Let's withdraw my first motion, and I'm make a motion, we table this, bring back, repeal it, replace.
Okay.
I'll second that. Okay, motion and second. Table. Bring back to rebuild and replace.
Yes.
Straighten up the
Bring
line.
back and already next meeting. Who's second?
Mr. Meek. I'm sorry, Mr. Lloyd, did you want to say anything or? No. Okay.
Yes, Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Terry?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Planning and building, ordinance to annex property at 1742 West Center Street, R1 to C2, emergency passes.
Mayor, Council, Mr. Terry, this is a request for annexation by Dr. Bishop and Christy Bishop for his dental practice out on Tinsburg. Dr. Bishop is planning on enlarging his practice and wants to come into the city so he can take advantage of the city services. And I'm asking for approval for the annexation. I do have an emergency passage on here because we'd like to move forward with the construction when he gets ready to and before the winter hits.
I'll make a motion to pass this ordinance by title only.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Yes.
I make a motion to put this ordinance on the first reading by title only.
There we go.
We have that motion and second.
Let's Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous. An ordinance annexing certain real property within the city limits of Greenwood, Arkansas, signing the same awards, declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
Let me suggest one thing, and then you don't have to make really much of a change. The survey description that you have here, it doesn't really tell us a meets and bounds description, it gives us the address and parcel number. So we might want to attach as an exhibit to it, the actual legal description itself.
We have that, I don't know that.
I'm just saying attach it as part of the ordinance.
Yeah. And normally I will put on there also commonly known as,
Yeah.
if it makes it easier to identify the parcels when you're looking at parcel numbers or legal description, you do commonly known as.
I just know when they start trying to
Yeah.
draw out the location that they're going to be looking for.
Yeah, well, attach that.
Yeah.
I mean, I need to try to amend my motion to attach it to the real survey. I got a feeling this is fixing, we might have a second, third reading.
Right, because you did, yeah. I don't know, Mike,
Do I need to try to amend my motion to add exhibit A?
But just for clarification.
he doesn't have to amend his motion, or did we just say
We can
it?
just,
For the record?
just say it for the
Oh,
record.
all right, no.
Had a motion later, second, third reading.
Second.
Have a motion second to waive second, third reading.
Let's Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
Rico?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion to adopt the ordinance.
Have a motion second to adopt.
Let's Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
Mr. Rico?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion to enact emergency clause.
Second.
Have a motion second to enact emergency clause.
Let's Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel?
No.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Passes by majority.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next on the agenda is, again, Mr. Bell, planning.
The next item on the agenda is the rezone of that property. As you know, when we annex any property, when it comes into the city, it comes in as an R1. This is on our master street plan as commercial, and so therefore I would like to have this rezoned to the C2 as it should be. Again, it does have an emergency clause, so we can continue on with this annexation.
Tony, what's the difference in C1 and C2, or is there a difference?
C1 is a commercial, for example, your downtown businesses would be C1. C2 means that it can be in anything to the driving public. So C2 pretty much covers just about anything. You know, hotels, motels, restaurants, service stations, legal offices like Mr. Hanby's or dental offices. And so that corridor is a C2 corridor. C3, we have a C3, but that's an entertainment district, and it was only used one time many years ago. But C1 and C2 is two things that we deal with.
C3 doesn't go to, for C3PO, does it?
No,
The folks bottom would be C3.
that's right.
Anybody? John?
I'll make a motion, we put this ordinance on by first reading by title only.
First and second, what he said.
Mr. Andrew, you may attach a meets and bounds to this, too.
You can, it's not as important on this one because this is, I don't see anybody that, the other one, they're gonna be drawing your city boundaries. Other people are gonna be looking at that, and they're gonna want meets and bounds. This one is generally just for your city's purposes, and I think that, that description is fine. If we want to add that to just to cover the bases, we can do that. The other one I'm more concerned about is
Just say do both of them.
What?
I'll say do both of them, whatever you want to do both of them. With the description.
Yeah, it's easily done.
Having exhibit A, which would be the real boundaries of this property.
Did I call that?
Oh, I think so.
Lancer?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Unanimous. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go. Yes. You haven't read the title yet.
Oh, shit. What in the world? Okay,
I
an
think it's
ordinance
my
amending
fault.
ordinance number 18-09 for the purpose of rezoning certain property in the city of Greenwood, amending the official zoning map of the city of Greenwood, declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
Motion to waive the second, third readings.
Second.
We have a motion second tonight.
Would you shut that
Wow,
down?
what is going on? Go ahead.
Dan Terry?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion we adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Have a motion second to adopt.
Mr. Lancer?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
I make a motion to enact the emergency clause.
Second.
Have a motion and second to enact emergency clause.
Lancer?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
No.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Has adopted.
Thank you.
I might mention that Mr. Keith Blythe, who is the attorney for Dr. Bishop, in his packet that he gave, he sent me, he does have all the legal descriptions and valves, so that will be added to that. And again, I will add on top of that commonly known as, and that way in your analysis, I can look at that, so I know exactly where that is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Thank you, Mr. Blind. It's a pleasure to meet you.
I'd like to state for the record that Ron Powell has entered the meeting, so.
Ms. Danielle, would you come up here for just a second? It's a little embarrassing. Would you turn it off for me? Thank you. It's just a notice, because I can't seem to get her done. So.
Is it a dimmer switch?
No, I get it. It's the notice. Every time I get a notification, it's
still turn that off.
Oh, you turn-
It wasn't.
oh, thank you very much for your patience and working in. It's my assistant, everyone. She's wonderful.
Hard work, somebody's got to do it.
Almost like it's a dimmer switch, huh?
It's a little bit like, it's like a dimmer switch on a Vega, but a cool Vega. All right, moving on. Number 6. discussion regarding ordinance 20-10 mobile vending ordinance. So all I want to do this evening is discuss it a little bit. I don't want to get bogged down too because we're on a roll here. But there's a few things in this ordinance, in my opinion, that needs some tweaking. Not necessarily asking to do it tonight, but maybe we can if we can get it done quickly enough. There has been some issues in town that I'm working on, along with, I say they're in town, they're with our food vendors. I want to go on public statement that I am all for food vendors, trucks in the city of Greenwood. I have been there for as long, I've been in that state of mind, Danielle can testify, for 6.5 years or more prior to my becoming mayor even. I want them here, they should be here, but we have to make sure they are following guidelines that the city provides for them. That is not happening currently with some of them. Neither Mr. Hunter is here, who is our building inspector, and also Casey, who is our code enforcement officer, have assisted me, or I assisted them, if you will, of going out and looking at these physically, looking at them. And I didn't unplug anything on record, but not everybody was following this ordinance. There's a couple of things that I think need to be fixed. One, it states, and I'm not looking at it, you've got it in your hand, I think, is that they have to be, they cannot be left unattended after certain hours of the day. Meaning, literally, in my opinion, somebody backs their truck up to it and hauls it back home and then brings it back the next day. That's.
And actually, Judge, sorry to correct you.
You're fine. What, if you, John, if you come up, because we really need you on.
It doesn't say that they shall not be left attended after certain hours. It says
Okay,
they
just
shall not be left unattended.
unattended. You are correct. That's right. So that's an issue, because if they're left unattended, they're left unattended, whether they're going home at night or if it's in the daytime, they're shut down. So that's the thing that I think we need to address. The other thing I would like to address is, paraphrasing, can't be hooked up to water or sewer. We're still talking with Greg and Tim about that, what they recommend, because I'm going to lean on them to recommend something back to me. Technically, in my opinion, that means they are to be an RV, self-contained on both ends, gray water and freshwater. They're not, some of them are. Some of them, no names, were plugged, ran a pipe down out of the bottom of their trailer. I don't know what's going in it, because it could be gray water, meaning sewer for sure, or a grease trap. And then they went over, ran a pipe directly into a clean out, which is not good. We don't know what's going in. Or they ran it out and ran it directly into a drain in the ground. Straight in. No. 2, water hoses hooked up to a hydrant, means you're hooked up to city water. There are white food grade water hoses. We've all drank out of water hoses, right? Some of us it hurt, some of us it didn't. I'm still alive, but there are food grade water hoses that the health department approves. Some of this stuff the health department has got, I'm talking to the health department, or trying to get them to help us to come down and govern, if you will, some of this stuff that they're responsible for. But as the ordinance reads, no water, no sewer. Meaning self-contained. It's, somebody find it?
Yeah, there's 2 sections. One is in the definitions where it says, and cannot be attached to the water or wastewater system of the city of Greenwood. That's under A, under definitions. I really think that becomes a rule, and it should be down in rules and regulations, C3 rather. A in section 3 says, and shall not connect to city services unless approved by the Greenwood Planning Commission Board of Adjustment.
So there's options there for them if they come and go to the Board of Adjustments, Mr. Bell's area, and get their approval. But nobody has done that. No food vendor that I'm aware of, for sure. So we're out there trying to make them comply with what we have and as it stands. And I think we're getting pretty close. Some of them, one of them has not opened yet because of this, of our going out, whether it was Hunter or, well, I was there, but I didn't talk to him, so there was a letter left or no, that said you can't do gentleman, very courteous and very wanting to know what the rules are. This is the new one across from, oh, never mind. So they were not able to open, so I put them in touch with a local plumber to see if he could help them. The local plumber suggests that we look at this and try to figure something out, or leave it alone and say, you gotta be self-contained or you can't be here. I personally am pursuing, we'll have to come back to you obviously, a city-owned property to make a food court. Fayetteville does it, a lot of places do it. You now have the restrictions there. I mean, you can't be in the city of Greenwood unless you're in this food court. We may have two. I don't know if we're big enough for two, but there may be two places. But you gotta be here or you can't be here. That kind of puts everybody in the same place. It puts them on the same leveling playing field. It separates them a little better from your brick and mortar businesses. The other one that I have a little bit of, or I have had complaint on, I'll let you speak to me, I'm sorry, John.
Oh.
One of the other complaints was part of the ordinance that is kind of specific, that you can't, my words, you can't block a brick and mortar with your food vendor truck. You can't, it's, I think it called the drive-by something. So if you're driving down the road and there's a food truck here in the parking lot, you can't see the vendor, the brick and mortar behind him, you're breaking the law. View from the highway or road, okay? That's taking place as we speak. So we've got to address that. And yes, I got an actual complaint, not Mr. Wastewater, on that one. So I've got to address that. There's other people. So I think it needs some tweaking. If you want to do it tonight, I'm all in. Mr. John, Mr. Bangor.
Okay, so I will do my very best to be as brief as I possibly can because I respect your time. So a few years ago, I was coming out of Jaegers and Rod Powell walked up to me and said, hey, what are you going to do with that property across the street? Which is right next to Lafayette, sir, right where the trail's coming down here and all of that. And I said,
great food court area.
Pardon me? Maybe that's why this ordinance exists. Anyway, going back to what I was saying. So Rod said, I said, I don't know. And he said, well, I've got a great idea. Up in Fayetteville, we have these outdoor food courts. That would be a great place for it. I thought, well, heck yeah, that would be a great place for it. So I did the research. I went to Dallas. I went to Fayetteville. I went to Oklahoma City that has a very cool one. I went to several places and I saw, hey, what do you guys do for the vendors and stuff like that? Well, they provide water often, but generally not sewage. And they provide electricity, and they shore electric like you see at a campground or something like that. Just a halfway decent looking little box that just provides the power to each spot. And a lot of them have a concrete pad or a shale pad or something like that. So I had the electrician come down, and I had asked about it. I mentioned it to Doug, and I mentioned it to Tammy, I believe, and mentioned it to a few other people, and it was a great idea. And there was no ordinance at all. Okay, great. So I put my plans together over the winter. In the spring, I come down to start on my permit process because I had my electrician out there and everything. And I'm told by Mr. Oliver that there is an ordinance about food trucks that I should probably take a look at. Well, now there's an ordinance against exactly what I had planned. Might have taken that a little personally at the time, not anymore. But so we pass an ordinance against it, which is fine. My position at the time was, well, it's fine. If the city doesn't want it, it's the city's prerogative to make an ordinance against it. But I got several people tell me, well, wait, there's not an ordinance against it. Yes, there is. And there is because, number one, nobody is going to rent a spot in an outdoor food court and move their trailer every single month. They're just not going to do it. And if it was me, I wouldn't do it either. Number two, your rule says must not be
be located within 150 feet of any food service or like business not owned by the vendor or property owner. And I respect that. You're trying to protect the brick and mortars. And I absolutely think we should protect the brick and mortars. So I mentioned that, hey, that is part of the ordinance that is against it. Because if I have a food truck here, and I have another one 15 feet away, I'm violating this ordinance. And so when I mentioned that to somebody here at City Hall, they told me, oh, well, that's not what that means. Okay, but it's what it says. Okay, so whether it means that or not, when the guy comes to write me a ticket, I can't say, well, that's not what it means. Because he's writing me a ticket based on what it says. So specifically, we've made it against the law to have any kind of area where we can put the food trucks. Maybe that's because Doug wants his own special city-owned park, I don't know. But we've made it against the law to have a place to put the food trucks where they can be centrally located and everything like that. So, I mean, guys, I was going to do it up right. Add some lighting, we were going to have games down there, maybe a couple of prefabricated holes of miniature golf that would be free for people that are just coming down there and stuff like that. But in the end, the ordinance forbids it.
John, I'm sorry, where is that? I know I've seen it, but where is that?
Section 4C.
Okay, okay. Got it. Thank you.
And then it speaks of, you know, also, mobile food vendors shall not provide any of the following: any dining area, including not limited to tables, chairs, booths, bar stools, benches, and stand-up counters, unless a proposal for such seating arrangement is submitted with the permit application and approved by the mayor as the designated representative. Okay, with all due respect, we're not even telling them what the rules are for the food truck, so how in the world would they know that they can't do that? Because when you tell people, hey, this violates the ordinance, they're like, what ordinance? There's not an ordinance on food trucks.
No, sorry, I'll let you.
No, go ahead.
The food vendors don't know there's an ordinance.
A couple of them don't.
They do if they come to get a permit to be here.
Okay.
We give it to them. I have made absolutely sure through Ms. Terry's office or my office in the water, because I'm not sure where they pick it up, because they do a couple of different things. But when they buy a permit, seek out a permit, they get that. Not all of them know, not all of them read it.
Why are there not less than 4 food trucks parked permanently in this town then, if they knew it before they got their permit? And I'm not trying to.
They don't read it.
I'm.
The gentleman that came to
Okay.
my office, he asked the same question
So
5
that
times. Some of the folks, I'm sorry, some of the folks do not speak English. And they literally need, and I don't speak English, by the way, but they literally need some guidance through the ordinance, and they have it in their hand, and they don't, not all of them, but that is a fact.
Respectfully, my statement was, they don't know that they're violating the ordinance. And
Right, until.
That is essentially the truth, because they're not reading the
Correct,
ordinance.
that is correct.
So, and I'm not trying to describe that as a failure of the city.
No.
So, what we have now is a situation where, and this is not the daily minutia that our police department should be involved in at all. You know, it should not be their responsibility. They've got enough going on. And I'm not saying it is their responsibility. I'm just making that statement. So the point that I'm trying to make is we created this ordinance specifically to protect the businesses that are already here that are brick and mortar. Except there's nowhere to put one of these food trucks that doesn't violate that ordinance in one way or another. And more specifically, particularly the parking, unattended clause, but more specifically, if they're within 150 feet of each other, then we need to have language that says, of a actual stick-built, site-built, brick and mortar, however you want to put it in the ordinance, but it should say from an actual building instead of saying, because as it is written, it says I can't have another food truck within 150 feet of this food truck.
I agree. With the food court in mind, this would have to be rewritten for sure. I mean, if you're willing to do it, and I'm not saying we're gonna rewrite it for you,
I don't want you to rewrite it.
and I know you're not asking, but absolutely, if the food court is in mind, and I was here, did I sign that thing? With the food court in mind, or a city food court, or a private food court, you gotta change the language to make it work. You can't spread the 150 foot out. And because you're gonna, on your property, which would be a great place for food court. What are you gonna get, 3, maybe, if you put,
Oh, you'd be stretching it to get.
that's what I mean. But I will say this, the one that is, and I'll be very specific, it's not Mexican, it's Salvadorian, the one that's at the gas station at the Y. As far as I know, he is not breaking any ordinance now other than the unattended part. He's moved, there's nothing 150 foot light food to him. He's not blocking another business. He's not plugged in anymore, am I right, to either sewer or water.
I drove by, it looks like there were tables and chairs.
The table, no, well, there's a canopy, and you're right, absolutely, and here's the reason that's in the ordinance as far as that goes. The mayor's office or the city hall has to have something to say, because you don't want it to become spread out bigger than it should be, and you should have some control over, there is something in there to prevent 15 chairs or 15 tables, 16 canopies, and they take up the whole parking lot. So that's what that was in there for those folks to get permission from the mayor's office, whoever the mayor is, to proceed with that. There are a couple, if not more than 3, that have amenities that have not been approved.
So my point is, and we can speak specifically of the coffee shop, so we're not, when it comes down to the coffee shop that's in the little plaza across from Logan's,
Right.
it's a nice little coffee shop. I know the lady who owns it. She spent a lot of money sprucing up that spot and everything like that. And now there's food trucks and a little concession stand, which, by the way, under your ordinance qualifies as a mobile vendor that, again, should be bound by this.
Yep.
So there are 3 food trucks in that space. I would bet.
One's gone, one's moved to the side of the plaza. The egg rolls are way over here. They are.
Is it not mobile anymore?
Yes, mobile.
Okay, then it is still a food truck.
But they have removed themselves. Oh, I'm not arguing it's a food truck at all. I'm saying it's not there in front of the building.
Oh, okay, okay.
Her issue of being blocked is still legitimate from the snow cone stand and the Euro trailer. Absolutely.
So with the setting that about her being blocked aside, that specific problem is the entire basis of this ordinance. This ordinance is set up so we are not punishing brick and mortar companies. We're trying to protect the brick and mortar businesses that are here. Okay, but if we don't do anything about violations of the ordinance.
We are.
Okay.
And the police aren't doing it. Code enforcement and a building inspector.
Okay.
I promise you. We've shut them down. They're not open because of the city, because of us. I want them open, but we are making them be compliant.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Have we said anything to the landlord of this tea?
I'm not aware of that conversation yet.
I mean, the guy that's getting rent from the coffee house, the same guy saying, go ahead and put your deal right here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I would think he would know this ordinance.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
No, well, he's gonna say he does not. I'll just tell you that.
It looks bad for the city, though.
Absolutely.
The same guy who denied me the permit to begin with is the father of the guy who owns the plaza.
You're not-
Thumbing his nose, not the ordinance.
You're preaching to the
And
choir.
I don't care if I have any friends, so I'll
No, it's
say
okay.
whatever.
And that particular gentleman is no longer with the city because he retired.
Well, I understand that.
So, but no, so John, I just
From
want to.
a public standpoint, and trust me, Doug, I say this respectfully, because I really do respect all of you, okay? From a public standpoint, It looks like because Daddy retired from the city, he can do anything he wants.
No, and
And
so,
that is the impression of the lady who owns the coffee shop and
Understand.
several other people, just
Absolutely.
because
I will, I'm sorry,
Scripture says, you know, even the appearance of evil is evil.
absolutely. And,
So-
Can I suggest this?
yes,
I think we all agree. I think everybody here agrees with the points being made. And so instead of all that, do we want to walk through this and point out, strike this? add
I'd
that?
love to if you want to take the time. I think it's important because, as he said, we are at this very moment, right now, they're probably not open, but they might be. There are some of these that are in compliance and some are non-compliance.
Here's my thought.
And we are, and by the way, nothing is easy and nothing is as quick as I would like it to be, but we're working on it. But yeah.
This is my 2 cents, and I mean, I'm just, because I've seen it, just like the one over here by the senior citizens. To me, that shouldn't be there. Okay, that's just my opinion. These things ought to be in a designated area, because you got people like across the street from that coffee shop, that one there, that area, they spend all that money putting all this time into their bricks and mortars, but these food trucks ought to be in a designated area instead of scattered all over town. I think if you're gonna come to Greenwood with a food truck, you know, not just because he got that piece of property, but I think the 150-foot apartments, I don't care if you got 10 food trucks together, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the 150 foot should not have anything to do with the
Right.
food courts.
Right, if they got a
It
food
is-
court, and there's 10 trucks in there, so be it.
They can be 10 feet apart.
But you got these people like the coffee shop, we've used it since that's been brought up, I mean, like I said, they spend a lot of money, and then you've got this cypress rice sitting out there that people can't hardly get into the parking lot because of all the stuff, the picnic tables and the chairs and all that. So for me, living in Greenwood for 51 years, they ought to be in the vicinity, they ought to be in a general area instead of one here, one there, one here, and they've got stuff strewn out everywhere. It ought to be a designated area, not, like I said, not just because he's got a prime piece of property for that.
Did we mention that?
But I'm just saying that, I don't know, I think
Well,
it
the
takes
property
away.
on 10 Spur was prime, that's a perfect spot, they were all stacked up out there for a while.
I'm not in the business. I frequented those places more than once, and there's only one there now for whatever reason. And again, I'm not trying to, well, we're gonna address it, so I guess I'll address it now.
Yeah, there could be more.
That one is not, I think we're hooked up some water there that's not correct. And I'm not trying to throw, but I'm not saying anything, I'm not pressing charges tonight.
Right.
It's good
But-
to go.
It's good to go now? Good.
I agree.
Thank you. So we are working on it.
I agree with Lance. I think our ultimate goal was maybe where they're kind of in little spots. They could all be individually private owned by somebody. Mr. Van Gorder could own one, and then whoever's down there could own one. But if we could get them out of there, it looks like our problems are coming from the Bradley Olivers of the world that are putting up little shacks out there. And if we could contain them in doing what you did, he's proposed.
I don't know how many times we can say, I'm not bad enough, we're saying the same thing about 10 times. I started the whole meeting, the whole discussion by saying, we need a piece of city property, or we need to encourage someone like Mr. Van Gorder to do the same, to do that and do that.
But I would like to spend some time on this. I'd like to take this to the A&P Commission, which we're fixing to meet,
To help,
because those are all restaurant owners.
I don't know, yeah,
And I'd like to kind of get their skill on it.
you may not like it.
Well, as a commissioner, I'll probably come back and then state what they,
And I don't think they're anti-food vendor, I don't know
I
that.
think they're anti-Bradley Oliver sticking one out in front of their business.
Well, we've got to fix that. That, when we say, you said that's compliant, and that's not in front of Bradley Oliver. So Bradley Oliver we have two issues. Why don't we just talk about it?
Okay, let me just say one last thing, and then I'll sit down, you guys.
Okay.
Talk all you want.
Okay.
So, to be very, very clear, I'm not looking for any special treatment. I'm not saying, hey, let's get the food vendors out of everywhere else so they can only go to my property, okay? That is not what I want. That is not what I'm asking you for. All I'm asking you for is a level playing field where we all play by the same rules.
Yep.
And if we all play by the same rules, hey, I can play any game as long as I know the rules, okay? But I'll follow them, and I expect other people to.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, gentlemen.
No, good points, thank you, sir.
Mayor, can I
Yes, sir.
add a couple
Absolutely.
about water that needs to be thought of? We had one situation, I think it's on the other end of town, where the gentleman had a residential property and a meter. The water's going through there, and then he's running garden hose to a commercial. And there were
That's where it started, though, that's where this started, right?
I don't know about that, but there's lots of issues with that. Food trucks are designed to be self-contained, you fill with water, you have a gray water holding tank, you fill with water, you go to wherever it is you're going, and then you leave, and then you fill up and dump somewhere you have a place to dump. There's some issues regarding water, because now they've become a commercial user. I have to inspect them for reverse flow and backflow, and it's real hard to inspect them here one day and gone the next. If you did have a central location, that would be better. Obviously, the snow cone place out here by Fashions, they have their own meter. They're a little small, not a shack, but a small building, and they have their own meter. They purchase their own meter. That's kind of how we're designed. Things under different roofs are supposed to have their own meter, because this guy doesn't pay his bill, this guy gets his water cut off. If this guy's in violation, this guy gets his water cut off. And there's some things to think about in regards to water. And when you have water going in, you have to have water going out. You have to have a place for that to go, and it has to be sanitary and not just run on top of the ground.
You're referring to if they're hooked up to our water, not self-contained.
Right, if they're hooked up to water. If
Yeah.
they do meet all of the things, I'm not saying these things aren't solvable, I'm saying there are things to think about. So if they are hooked up to ours, they're probably going to have a backflow device. A lot of them will probably have a small check device, but those can't be tested. Unless they have an air gap, they're probably not going to have an air gap. But those are just some things I'm tasked with. They're not even in the plumbing code, they're governed by the Division of Engineers, because they're a commercial entity. Once you have things for sale, you become commercial. So those are some things to think about. It could be some challenges, but generally, if they were in one location, you could either have a master meter, or you could have individual meters for the individual lots, but they would still have some health code issues that they would have to comply with.
So in my scenario specifically, if I had a master meter with a backflow protector at the meter or close to the meter, and then I was responsible for that bill.
Right.
And then everybody would pay me, and they would each have a hookup where they can just hook up, is that?
That could be workable.
Okay.
That could potentially be workable.
In the same sense, you could also get a grease trap, because that's the only problem I have with them dumping, is they're cooking
Yep.
and grease. So if you had a main grease trap somewhere where they could dump, and then you would be the one to keep it clean. Or we talked about putting separate grease traps in each one if they dump, but if you had just a large right there, you'd have a dumping site.
Outstanding. Excellent.
So good, this is good stuff. This is
4A is interesting that you can't dispense food or drink on a public street that does not exceed 25 miles an hour in the city. If you're on a 45 mile an hour street, park in the right of way? What's the point of that?
I don't know, I didn't write it. I did sign it. So here's the,
What's the question?
all right, let me ask a question real quick. Do you want to go through it now, or do you want to go to the MP first?
I'd say let it be first.
I'd like to do that.
Okay.
I'd like for everybody to study it for a month.
Okay. In the meantime, I'm tasking Hunter and Casey to follow what we have in writing today. And they are already doing that, but we will continue that. So watch for the fire orders.
Hunter and Casey in the middle of it, and Hunter and Casey bring us some suggestions too.
I would suspect so.
If they can look at
I
other
think-
communities and say,
I think
this
you
would
would
fit well in Greenwood, this would fit
Yeah.
well in Greenwood.
I think we're all in agreement. What I'm hearing is that we're all want food trucks. And we all eat at them. ordinance thing. I do.
Let me ask this, I mean, it sounds like, I think you're exactly right, Lance, that I think sticking point is location. One of the major sticking points is location,
Well, here-
view and all that.
here's what we gotta
Go to, you know, a designated food truck area or something approved by the planning,
But you gotta have,
what do we call that commission, building?
Planning commission?
Yeah,
Planning.
Planning commission.
I agree,
You know what I'm
but,
saying?
yeah, I do, but we have to not be writing an ordinance because of our personal feelings. We don't like seeing one beside a gas station. You gotta have a reason.
Well, what
And I'm
I'm
not saying
getting
you
at,
are, but
what I'm
it's
getting
gotta
at
be.
is, I don't want to make an ordinance that says you can only do it in this designated food truck area that is over here on Denver Street. If somebody wants to go out on the east side of town, put them, and it's appropriate.
Well, you got, that's,
There needs to
you have
be
to
a
define what's
mechanism that
appropriate.
says, there's the problem.
Yeah.
There's gotta be a mechanism or somebody that says,
It is defined,
okay, we think that's okay.
it is defined what's appropriate there in this ordinance.
It doesn't say you can't park one beside a gas station. I don't think.
Well,
It doesn't say you can't park one beside a gas station. Does it?
I don't think so.
A light food. So if
That's
it's
the same kind of food or just food vendor period?
a light food, I think it says.
You might set up your zoning like we talked a little bit ago.
Tacos, you can't put a taco truck in parking lot of Taco Bell
And call it a C3 ordinance or a 3C.
unless the property owner approves.
That's
I'm
what I'm
sorry.
saying, those exceptions.
You can
Sorry,
do
Come
a,
on, come on.
you can do a C3 zoning for entertainment food trucks.
Right.
And you could designate Mr. Van Gorder's property, the one out on Tinsburg, the area over there by Tina's Pizza, and some other areas, and say those are the areas that you could put in food trucks.
I think we're all on the same page. Let's get a food court.
But we were talking about how we're gonna designate where they can put them.
Right.
Do your C3 zoning for food trucks and other entertainment.
Well, I mean, I guess kind of the point I was driving at was, just if somebody wanted to put one out there at the corner of whatever road, say, out the back,
Okay.
probably be okay.
Well,
You know,
why
but
would they come to the planning commission and say, I would like to have that rezoned to a C3 so I can put a,
Well, if they didn't own it though, you
but
know.
the owner would.
Maybe I'm not hearing you right, Mr. McDaniel, but it's like, we don't mind it out there because we're not bothered by it, but we're bothered by.
Well, I'm saying, you know, I mean, we get in here that, I mean, you can't do it in residential.
Right, but
Right.
we are mentioning areas that we don't particularly care for because we don't like the way they look. And
Well, if a guy
Well,
comes down.
you gotta be
Our
careful.
ones in Bradley's lot, the ones in front of Bradley's lot. it's-
those are breaking this ordinance.
Right.
Right now,
So
correct.
maybe if you enforce the ordinance of that,
We
you can't
are,
put these in front of this brick and mortar business, then it's taken care
but
of.
beside the brick and mortar it does not prohibit beside one unless it is light food and the property owner did not give permission. And I'm talking about one specifically that nobody likes the way it looks, but it's not breaking the ordinance
Is it
as it
unattended?
stands.
Is
Sir,
it left unattended at night?
that part of
Then
the
it's breaking the
ordinance.
ordinance.
But they're worried about the location. I got you.
Well, this ordinance doesn't really say at night, it just says.
Unattended.
Unattended.
That's, well, he made that point. Unattended can be in the day when it's closed.
There's business hours or, doesn't say it can't be.
Unattended.
Right.
Unattended. That's why it's not well written, sir.
What's the thought process behind unattended? I mean, if it's secure,
You tell me. That's what it doesn't say.
I mean, just because.
Here's how it's hard, here's the reason it's hard to go out and do some of these things that they're doing is because what does that mean? Hunter can't show up and Casey can't show up and say, or they can go up there, I'm gonna use the Euro one, I hardly ever see it open. It is unattended 90% of the time. And it's also breaking up in pieces, but it's that one Or is it because nobody's not open, therefore it's unattended? Yes, sir.
I think you kind of hit on this a little earlier, but I told business owner I would bring this up. He said he had to spend an extra $25,000 on his plans because he had to have the bottom part brick and had to turn the metal a certain way and all these things they had to do. And it looks like, I'm not going to pick any trailer, but some of these, I think they found the cheapest trailer they could find and spray painted it and pulled it in.
3 times they painted it different colors, but we don't say they can't.
Was that marketing?
I have no idea what to do. You know, if we had an ordinance that said if you're gonna show up in Greenwood with a food truck, and it better be brand new, and it better be self-contained, we're kind of pushing it a little
This
bit.
thing-
Nobody's gonna be here.
This thing came out when the yellow kitchen truck come up to the square and was not hurting anybody, but they got their feelings hurt. And we started making all this, and that thing would drive off at night, go somewhere, and come right back and make a lot of people happy except for one person.
Yep.
And so we jumped the gun and micromanaged, as we always do, make commissions, and here's this big old ordinance. Well, now all of a sudden, people are moving in these little trailers that don't have a steering wheel and a motor. And so we didn't think about that when this was written. That wasn't even, it was just all about that yellow vending truck that was making somebody mad in town.
At that time, that's
Yes.
correct. But mobile food vendor truck anymore is not a drivable.
Well, I'm just
But
saying,
no, you're right, that's how it was born.
unfortunately, what's happened is, and I'll use the rib lady out there for my instance, that's the only one I've ever been to. But, I mean, she should never have gotten a permit to operate if she was gonna plop a trailer down right there and take off. I'm assuming she's got it hanging in her window like it says here, she's supposed to have. That's what gets me, we should never have given anybody a permit that was gonna pull a trailer in here and leave it.
I agree with that.
And I mean, after the first night, it should have been, whoa, if you're not bringing that home, yeah, we're gonna pull you.
To your point and to Mr. Van Gorder's point, I keep wanting to call you Mr. Van Vega, you and I know that, is that per this ordinance, I can only think of one currently that, none of them are compliant with the whole ordinance. None of them. I had to catch myself. So today or tomorrow, we can go shut them all down.
One thing you could do.
But this is not good written, this is not well written.
One thing that you could do is require all mobile vendors to be self-contained unless they are in a designated approved.
This is the stuff we need to talk about. Yes.
That
Absolutely.
provides people service.
If you want to be outside the food court, designated food court, whether it's privately owned or
Self-contained,
public,
you have on leave.
then you still got to follow the other guidelines, but if you're going to do that, you're going to be actually self, I totally agree with that.
And,
You can make those guys move.
Yeah.
I mean, to the detriment of my wallet possibly, there's gonna have to be some specific rules that govern the food courts as well.
Sure.
I mean, so to Chief Dawson's point, we got people that say, hey, look, I had to build it exactly how they said. It had to be the right brick, the metal had to be turned the right way, had to have a Knox box, I had to have all these things just to open. But again, this guy can just roll in with a food truck and open it up and put me out of business. So I absolutely get that point. But again, at the risk of costing myself money, whatever.
But you got plenty of.
What's a debt? Anyway, whatever we choose to do for a food court, we need to have specific rules for that. I mean, we don't want, while I understand we can't say, hey, if it's not stainless steel and perfect, we don't want it here.
Right.
We can't say that, but, you know, anything that is just an abhorrent eyesore, there needs to be something in there that says, look, you can't have that in there.
I can tell you what it's going to say. It's going to use the term that Mr. Hamby has advised us not to use as, what is it that's out there, some ordinances? Unsightly. I was advised that that's not very good anymore.
My wife says I'm unsightly.
Well, I know. She's told.
Another thing needs to be considered, 4L, signs, banners, or other advertisements must be approved by the mayor or his representative. They must meet our sign ordinance. We have a sign ordinance in place. I mean, that, you know.
True. So, promise you, or the one across from Casey or beside Casey's would be open if we weren't working on it. They are not open because they're trying to get compliant. But I shouldn't even ask. I mean, this is stupid. I shouldn't even be saying this, but for this ordinance to be followed to the T, tomorrow there'll be no food vendors in Greenwood. No mobile food vendors.
Unless the Yellow Kitchen drives out up here, gets a permit, goes out to the Valvo packaging parking lot, gets permission from them, and sets up a certain lunch.
Correct?
And then pulls away after it's done.
Correct.
Then leaves. Yeah.
That's right. Yes, sir.
If I could, just address the comment Tim made. On that truck, I was parks director at the time, and that food vendor was coming up, hooking up to city utilities, not getting charged for them, and was also using all of our grass and killing that into the park.
Right.
So that's why,
So what did you,
that was kind of the
yeah,
genesis of
I forgot
this.
about that.
Yeah, it was just beating our park to death.
Didn't ask him.
And they were sucking all the electricity in the park, and I was paying for it.
Right.
Okay.
Like I said.
Yeah.
So, John, if you can get that court open by tomorrow morning, it'd be awesome.
There's lots of parking spaces. If they're self-contained, they could be open.
By the way, you got two really nice entrances in now. You got, man, that's just a great spot.
I'm sold to.
You're, we've talked about that before. All right, what's the desire to move on? And we weren't gonna go through it, and now we count ours. You want to continue, or you want to?
I get my red dinner tomorrow.
Okay. Here's what I'll say. You can tell me what to do. We're gonna go out tomorrow. They're gonna go out tomorrow, and I'll go with them if I need to or whatever. And we're gonna definitely continue with our water sewer issue, because I think that's the most, that's up there. The other one is, for sure, blocking a brick and mortar, the view of brick and mortar. The 150-foot stuff, the tables and chairs in front of them is there, but that's not, we're gonna start at the top of the priority list and go down. Mr. Hunter. Okay?
I'm all for the 150 foot from a brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar, yeah,
Define
that's what it
it.
should say. That's what it should say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for having a protection in there for the people who have invested thousands of dollars in Greenwood. I am all about that.
So so as we continue this discussion next month or whenever, or as we go, I can promise you that I will pursue, and I think these gentlemen will too, that if we're talking food court, that is not part of the food court. We're not gonna expect you to put vendors on the food court 150 feet away. We'll change.
We're looking at two things, either you're truly mobile, or you're in a food court.
Right.
And
And in the food court, you gotta abide by he's gotta abide by our ordinance.
I think
And
that
we
could
would,
be, right, I think it could be in the same ordinance.
I do too. I don't think you need two. I think it just addresses court and out of court.
Well, if you had those trucks like Jake, Randy and Kim Digger had, drive up there, park, open windows, serve food, put drive off. That's self-contained. I mean, I think we're fine with that. So you gotta leave a provision for that truck to operate. These parts here, parts over there.
Yeah, and that's self-contained. That's awesome.
You probably still shouldn't be able to park that truck in front of the car.
No, they'll still have to follow. Yeah, absolutely. You don't drive your truck down in front of wherever. I don't think Mr. Gino or Derry would appreciate that, or allow it.
I do know that the A&P, Charlotte, they're hard to pin down when they're truly mobile.
That's for sure.
You know, they come and leave, and A&P, we get nothing.
You gotta be mobile behind them.
And then that makes the people on A&P very mad when they've got a lot of money invested, a lot of brick and mortar, a lot of time invested, and you got these guys sliding in there and sliding out. So there might need to be something in the permit process on the people that are truly mobile, truly self-contained, where we can track it.
It's tough. I mean, we all know it's tough. I mean, I can, but to chase them down and get their A&P tags it's hard enough in brick and mortar.
It's hard enough in brick and
more of a Charlotte issues.
That sounds like a good time for a $500 tap fee. We'll reimburse when your taxes are paid. That's actually a good time to reimburse.
Thanks, Tim.
There you go.
You know, Fayetteville is somebody that we might ought to talk to because they seem to have it down.
Yeah, they do. Have you done that,
So-
pointing the case, or, and I'm pointing to you because you're building, which is interesting. So, do I hire a mobile food vendor inspector? I'm gonna use the building inspector, and Casey is the code enforcement officer. So, I don't know if one of them's got it, but no, absolutely, we've got to call Fayetteville, we've got to call wherever else they
I
are.
talked to Shara, state clerk.
As far as the AMP. Okay. So we need to know how they collect their AP, and we need to know how they function on these courts.
Also, you mentioned a permit, we don't require a permit for these food trucks.
What?
We don't require a permit, I don't think that's in there. What permit you see is the
What do you
sales
got?
and tax use permit that needs to be displayed in the window.
That's what I'm talking about.
All that we issue is business license.
But
All
the
we're
license is what I need.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
They gotta
that
come down
people
here.
know that they don't come to get a permit from us.
But they're gonna get a license.
They just come to get a license,
It's
just
just a
like
different
anybody
word.
else. Do what?
It's just a different word.
Well, yeah, but there's more to it if they were coming to get a permit.
My point, I understand, but they're coming to get a license, so that's when they get their ordinance.
But you talking about privilege license.
Yes, that's all, and that's what he's talking about.
My point is they have to come to City Hall to get something, and we hand them a packet.
Sure, but it's not,
Where's this permit come from?
they come in,
Huh?
I give them a copy of the ordinance, I tell them they need a
That's my
business
point.
license.
My point was to make sure that they have the ordinance in their hand.
Sure, yeah, and I tell them to read it,
That's all, that's what I'm talking about.
but you would think that they have like more of a process, like when they're planning.
And they may, and they will may.
And
Okay,
I
let's go
think
fix
that's
this, you right?
missing.
If there was only a place in town where
If
they
there
were
was only,
all gathered in one spot,
I mean,
months at a time,
like
we could
a,
easily collect.
like a trail on both sides.
That would be wonderful.
All right, moving on. I mean, are we good to move on?
Yes.
What did we?
We're gonna let-
Who's gonna fix it?
Rod's gonna bring this to you to get their input, because they're business owners, brick and mortar food business owners. They're gonna discuss it. We will tweak, we will call, I keep pointing, we will call Fable, get their ideas. I would encourage Mr. Van Gorder or anybody else in the room to do their research if they're interested in this process.
You'll bring us a draft next
Absolutely,
week.
absolutely. In the meantime, we will do what I said a while ago. We'll go with blocking brick and mortar, water and sewer issue hookup. Because we've already unplugged several of them. Not because we don't like them, because they gotta be compliant, to your point. And everybody's gotta be compliant the same way now. So that's what we're gonna work on. For the next thing down the road is the blocking these brick and mortar folks. Yes, sir.
And these, we have something there about blocking post office boxes too.
Okay. By the way, I'll talk to you later. My mail keeps getting mixed up.
So this needs to be on the next agenda,
Yes,
like we're gonna have coffee.
Yes.
Even maybe.
yes. Good? Really? Mr. Cross? Are you kidding me? All right, that was good, fun. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Number 7, authorization to proceed with litigation on sidewalk easement. We need a true vote. Here's where we are, or where my office is. Danielle has called Mr. Handy wants an appraisal on the property that we need to get litigation going forward to get the easement for the sidewalk. It's going to be November before we get that back. We're spending $2,500 to get it. This is not new news. It's going to be November before they can get it to us. And then he has to have that before he can pursue litigation, but I would like for you to vote for him to be able to do it as soon as he gets it in his hand.
I'll make a motion to approve that authorization.
After that, we can make sure, with Danielle, I know we've been talking about one kind of property. How many more are outstanding, so we don't have to come back and do this one?
Okay, so there's 2 other ones that are outstanding. We got Taco Bell, hand delivered, it's done, we got it. We have, hallelujah, send up the flag. We have 2 Baptist Health, that we are in constant contact with, and I, on the phone, get the same answer. We're working on it, it's on somebody's desk. I'm getting less friendly with them as we go, because I'm like, that's awesome, but we might lose a $300,000 grant, I gotta have it. Baptist Health and
Church of Latter-day Saints.
Latter-day Saints Church, Sunday night, Mr. Bell met with a representative of that church on the church property. I see no issue, he was very nice. He said, the only issue he had was there's a shrub down there around the gas meter that I don't know, maybe wasn't even sure. I get the same answer from Latter-day Saints because we have to talk to Utah, to them, and they're very cordial, but they're like, yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, it's coming, we'll get it to you. I don't think we need to pursue that unless I come back next month and say, it's getting old. So only,
I just want to make sure we're all on
more like
track.
property, yes, ma'am.
On the Latter-day Saint one, that one, if they won't agree, we can just do that 4 foot.
That's correct, thank you. Jeremy Shores is our engineer on this. That one in particular, because it's one of the two that are hanging, minus the Morlocks, who's not just hanging, they're no. That one can shrink to a 4 foot sidewalk and get out of their property. And RDOT's good with that, we're already good. So we may go ahead and build a 4 foot sidewalk.
Do I need to amend my motion?
I don't know what your motion is.
On the one remaining, assume you could do a 4 foot, on
No,
the
sir.
remaining, that's,
Oh, Baptist Health cannot,
that.
only LDS.
Could the city attorney send a letter that says, we have asked about this repeatedly for the last 18 months, we're not getting anywhere.
LDS?
We don't
Absolutely.
hear something in the next 30 days, we're gonna.
Where's LDS out of?
They are Utah.
Okay.
No,
No, you're talking about Baptist Health, right?
Baptist,
Who are you doing with the Baptist Health, local or?
No, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
No.
We thought about it.
Maybe they'll respond to a letter from the attorney that says,
I
we
said,
don't get a response.
we're not local, I just go down.
Yeah, we would already been there. We started to drive to Pennsylvania one day.
Yeah, that area is 50 miles from the door, you know what I'm saying? They got a huge
Oh,
parking
yeah.
lot.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, Baptist, sorry, that's a health thing. We're trying to keep people from getting killed.
Well, that hurts their business.
You know, I had back job security.
I thought that was attorney.
I would love a letter from the attorney.
I mean, put some pressure on them.
Can you do that?
I'll try to scare them, I don't think.
Get a letter, we'll get address from
But I will myself.
Danielle. I'm not very mean on the phone evidently. I don't know.
Want me to call?
Oh, okay. Because I may need something later. That's where we are. I'm sorry, what was your motion? Oh, to,
Give authorization to proceed with litigation.
Daniel seconded.
this is on Morlock
One more.
property.
And you don't want me to include Baptist Health and LDS?
Litigation, I think a letter. I mean, I guess to save time, if you want to include them and the letter doesn't work,
Save time, so we don't have
Do
to
it.
wait till another meeting.
do it.
So I'd like to amend my motion to include Baptist Health, LDS, and Warlock property. There you go. Church of Latter-day Saints.
Well, as you're voting on this, I just want you to realize that the very first thing I have to do is we're gonna have to do a appraisal of each one of these. And right now, Daniel called and I said, oh, I can do something better than you. And I didn't get any.
Simply give you authorization, I mean.
We don't, I'm not, can we do this? Can you give authorization with the mayors
Yep.
on the two?
I like that.
Okay.
That's fine. I just don't want everybody saying, hey, we gave you authorization like 3 months ago.
I'd like to give those other two a little bit of, not time, but certainly. just-
Simply giving you authorization, I mean, the prerogative of when you do it. is up to you.
All right.
I will ask Mr. Andy now to form a letter for those other two, just a letter, not litigation. But he has permission to do
Well, if you
litigation.
want to go further, you
Yeah,
have
got it, okay.
authorization.
But have we not already had a letter?
I re-second my, right, my
I think they've been
side.
trying to do it
We've been trying to be nice.
to the max, and that's not working.
And it seemed to be okay, but we just. All right, so the motion is second.
Daniel seconded.
Yes.
Les Terry.
Yes.
Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
It's unanimous, and that is to proceed with litigation on sidewalk easements for the Warlock Property Baptist Health and Attorney Bladder residence, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Warlock, I will have the paperwork ready the second I get the appraisal in hand. I can take letters to the judge showing the appraisal before he's coming with the bond in the deposit to court. We'll sign it over on Joe Don. At least until we have here to determine how much we're going to have to open the ballot.
Mr. Burris, Don Burris, anybody know him?
I do.
We can call him, he's retired,
I'm trying to bring him out of retirement. but I
and
think-
ask him if he can bump up our November date on this appraisal on the Warlock property in Greenwood, Arkansas. I know him too, but I can't find him.
Don, who's doing it?
No, Don Burris has retired, but it's still Burris appraisal. We want to get him out of, the people in the office say it will be November because it's just being stuck in there. Mr. Hamby called thinking that we could be stuck up here, and he didn't get anywhere. So I don't know,
No,
Don,
you're another appraisal firm.
the other one tells us the same thing, and it's the same price.
I think if somebody could get a hold of Don, I tried to get a hold of him, but I think they saw through what I was trying to do.
He's gonna walk in the office and take 30 minutes
So, yeah.
and get her done.
I don't mind
think
giving it a
somebody
shot.
talked to Don, he would probably possibly do it.
If all of us call Don Burris, 479, but I've known him a long time and I can't find him. When he retired,
That's true.
but he's still his company.
If it's still his company, he still does a few appraisals, I did get that out.
Okay. Awesome. Moving on. Number 8, McKinney still here?
Yes.
I know it's past John's bedtime, so I'm going to ask if either one of you or all three or Mr. Eagle Scout.
I think Shane needs to.
Shane? Shane, somebody come up and tell us who you are and what's going on here. I've been bugging Rod Powell for 4 years on this.
He fails the test tomorrow, it's just a check.
Oh, wow. No pressure.
Shane, I just wanted to replace the single flagpole out in front of the city hall with 3 flagpoles at 35 foot and 230-foot poles. And the amount for the poles only is $7,524. And for groundwork and landscaping, I'm thinking, what is it?
3 to 5.
And then 3,000 or so.
No, 300.
No, 300.
These are taller than what's there now, right?
I think they're about the same height.
Not the same height, is it? So it's split a tree.
Yes.
Mr. Left,
230s and 35.
you said 2 what, 30s and 30?
Yes.
The one that's existing now is
We had
35.
Chad come out to measure it,
Yeah, he
make
did.
it 35 feet.
So we would,
Shane, does this include lighting?
Already has existing, right?
Existing lighting will cover all 3 poles?
The only one has to be illuminated, but the others would have.
and you said landscaping, for $35,000.
Internal and
Internal lanyard is important, is it not?
Yes.
And so the center pole is the highest pole?
Yeah.
Is that what you're planning? Is that okay?
And when we looked at those pole heights, Shane hollered at me on that. The flag now is 5 by 8, so those would be spaced out 9 feet or so.
Okay.
But the 2 smaller poles are the 4 smaller flags, which are flying right now, 3 by 5.
And nobody knows flag etiquette more than Mr. McKinney and Mr. McKinney and Mr. McKinney. Am I correct?
Kelly Hendricks.
And Kelly Hendricks. Yeah. So I got a question, what color are these particular flag poles?
So,
Silver is what's there now, correct? Okay. Is that what's on the fire? You got white over there, don't you? Good grief.
They're talking about a solid concrete, almost like a sidewalk with 3 holes in it.
Okay.
Keep lawnmowers and string trimmers away from
The pole,
or weed eaters, away from the pole.
and then landscaping around the concrete.
So
I'm
Shane,
pumped.
so Shane is working on the proposal phase of this workbook.
for the Eagle Scout project. And so, there's got to be a benefactor assigned, and that benefactor would be the city of Greenwood. The benefactor with the signature ability should be you. So I think what you're needing here is approval from the council to spend the money and allow you to enter into the agreement.
I make that motion.
Do you not want a budget amendment for it?
So I would have already, we didn't have this going, but this is outside my limit of spending.
Do you want a resolution that says up to such amount of money, because we don't have an exact amount of money?
We budgeted over 5,000, but we didn't at the time know the dollar amount. So that's why we don't have a resolution for it.
I mean, it would be nice to have a budget amendment.
Do it as a discussion.
Since it's over 5,000.
This may affect this year. I think it'll take about 4 weeks for him to get through the process, or it could be ordered, so that does put us in November.
And we're not endangering, I don't know how old you are, sir.
He's fine.
You're good. You got it.
So I think what we could do is come back to the following meeting with a budget amendment and amend the budget for this.
So right now, it's just proceed, go ahead
Right
and
now,
authorize.
it's just a procedure so he could move forward
Okay.
and go ahead
Yeah, that would be best.
and get an approved project.
So that has to go through the process.
So approve the project right now.
And then we'll come, if you don't mind, I'll just put it on the for next meeting, amend the budget for something not to exceed $10,000.
So what was the motion though, made here earlier?
Last May motion.
Hey.
Would you like to amend your motion, or
Yeah.
what was your motion?
I was just gonna make a motion to proceed with it. I mean,
Okay, that's fine, yes.
And you said, Mr.
Second.
Daniels.
Okay, gotcha. Lester?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Terry?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Mr. McKinney, before you sit down, I'd like to know what it means to be a scout. I'm just messing.
Just side note, I think you got an $800 discount for being an Eagle Scout project from the company, flagpoles. And then there's another $250 savings if we don't use a credit card and you guys issue a check.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. McKinney, for your presentation, and may I say again, as I've said a few times, but not enough, that everywhere in Greenwood, Arkansas, are Eagle Scout projects that make Greenwood a better place, pavilions, whatever, flagpole presentations. It's just, I would like to go and check and see. Maybe one I'm not happy with, there's a bridge at the Boys and Girls Club that is just not in good shape.
That's horrible.
It's horrible, it was a bad idea.
It's an old guy.
I will tell you, that thing has withstood the test of time.
Whatever. Chief Brian did it, so.
Your landscape right in front of the building.
Yes, absolutely. So, thank you, Scouts, for doing what you do. Troop 54, I think there's a couple others troops that have participated around town for sure, but it just continues. I think we could probably find this fact out, and I'd like to, when I go to the municipal league, go, by the way, Greenwood's got 150 Eagle Scout projects. How many you got? So, it's pretty cool. Thank you, sir. You guys fixed up. Do we vote? All right.
Is Shane, what is your rank in?
What?
You're not.
Are you like a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout? What about?
He's not able yet.
Not able yet, this is your project?
Yep.
So what am I supposed to, what's your title in the Boy Scouts? Just Boy Scout, or Scout?
I say the man.
That's sir.
Sir.
I guess we could say last guy.
He's Life Scout.
Life Scout? Okay, great.
How many Eagle Scouts in the room? No, really. How many Eagle Scouts in the room? Thank you. So, gentlemen, proud of you. Number 9, discussion of police salaries. So, Chief, you're up. And I think Tom and I are ready to tag a little bit or whatever. Depending on what you're going to say.
I've got my glasses, so.
Oh, here's
I can see when I read this, but when I look up, I can't see a thing. Recently, I met with Tom. Over the years, we have obviously lost people and replaced them. And every year that I can recall, the money that was saved by losing, obviously, someone of higher rank and getting a new officer has always been turned back into general fund. The first part of my proposal tonight is to ask this year for us not to do that. Looking at everyone's salaries, most people are not at their max. And what it accumulated up to was $1.30 per officer per hour to spread among everyone that is able to get a raise. I spoke with Mayor Anton about this, and this will obviously be a little bump, and I'll go through some numbers as quick as I can. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time, but I did give you a packet of probably 15 towns or so that where their start pay starts and where they max out when they provided it. Most importantly for me in this area is county PD, but I'm going to ask that you allow me to take that $1.30 and spread it amongst everyone. Lieutenant and down, the captain and I are maxed out, and whatever we can do for the guys I want to do. So if you'll allow me to go through these numbers as quick as I can. Comparing some cities that we will compete against for applicants, our starting pay was at $32,512, but the top out for patrolman at $42,450. Allen with a population of 5,800 starts out $37,500, and they didn't provide top out. A state trooper, we have someone in the process, and we're probably going to lose, I'd say, within the next few months. There shouldn't be any reason he doesn't get hired. They start, a trooper will start out at $40,340 and top out at $58,493 if they just stay as a trooper first, or actually a trooper 9 first class. Marlton with a population of 6,600 starts out at $40,019, and after 1 year they go up to $45,000. Fayetteville starts out $39,000 with a top out at $57,000, and these are all patrolmen, no rank. They just instituted a $10,000 sign-on bonus. I talked to Mike, the chief up there, and he said that sign-on bonus doubled their applicants, which wasn't very many. For a town that size, they went from in the teens to, I think he said 24 applicants this last go-around. Borrowing, with a population of 5,000, starts out $35,900. Fort Smith starts out $38,000 with a top out at $48,000, which Tom also helped point out that, I don't know if you saw the article, but Fort Smith had a study done, and they were grossly underpaid for this region, and there will be some changes, obviously, to their pay. Tiny Town with a population of 4,300 starts out at $42,800. And tops out at $57,213. Elkins, 3,400, starts out $38,500. Elm Springs, 2,400, starts out $36,992. Farmington with a population of 7,400, starts out at $42,000. Greenwood with a population of 1,400, starts out $38,500. Goshen with a population of 1,900 people, starts out $36,500. Johnson with a population of 3,700, starts out $39,239. Lincoln, population 2,481, 32,000, that's where they start out, which is about where we were at. Prairie Grove with 6,700 people, starts out $38,579. I wanted to have a range, obviously, from top to bottom. If you look at our pay scale, the difference of a patrolman topping out at 42,000, I believe it is, and a chief, me, my top out pay is 67, almost 68. So there's $25,000 difference between the patrolman topping out and where I top out, which leaves very little room. There's just not much room to take on additional responsibility, and the pay just doesn't jump to where they say, I'll take on that added responsibility for that money. You're talking about very little money when we do this. But for chief's pay, Greenwood starts out at 58 with a top out of 67. The animal police chief job starts out at 65,000 and tops out at 84,000. A corporal with the state police who has zero responsibility is just a senior patrolman, starts out at 50,000 and tops out at 72,000. So the corporal's pay scale is basically for state police is where pretty close to my pay scale. They actually top out more than what I would top out at. The Marlton chief starts out 63,481. He didn't provide a top out. Fayetteville lieutenant, again, I was trying to compare people that would have the same amount of people supervised as I do. The lieutenant pay starts out 69,000 and tops out at 87. The barling chief's pay starts out at 66,973, so he's pretty close to my top out starting out. Captain Fort Smith, 71,000 and tops out at 76. The Tiny Town chief starts out at 66 and tops out at 75. Elkins starts out at 68,958. Elm Springs, 72,577. Farmington, 82,673. Greenwood, 72,397. Goshen, which is that tiny town between Fayetteville and as you're heading up to Branson, Missouri, that tiny town that has a gas station. So their chief starts out 48,300. Johnson, 73,500. Lincoln, 60,255. And Prairie Grove at 73,542. So you know the numbers of these towns and how many officers they have. I've included state average is 2.35 officers per thousand. Greenwood's at 2.10, down from 2.23 with the new census. Alma has 14 officers, and they're at 2.38 per thousand. Marlton has 27 officers, they're at 3.62 per thousand. Barling has 11 officers, they're at 2.20 per thousand. Town has 15 officers, they're at 3.43 per thousand. Elkins has 8 officers, and they're at 2.46 per thousand. Elm Springs has 6 officers, they're at 3.90 per thousand. Farmington has 17 officers, they're at 2.30 per thousand. Greenland has 4 officers, they're at 2.76. Johnson, 8 officers, 2.12. Lincoln, 6 officers, 2.40. And Prairie Grove, 14 at 2.12. So those numbers, if anyone asks or says we have too many officers, we're below the state average, and of all these towns that are smaller than us, our average per thousand is the lowest of all the towns that I've compared here. I gave a packet that included all their pay scales that they gave me, including state police, Alma Police Department, basically all the towns that I mentioned. Tiny Town had a study that they acquired for, I believe it's Washington County, showing what their pay scales are. And they are also adjusting their pay scale according to that. Basically, all the chiefs I spoke to are in the process of trying to obviously get raises. Some cities have paid for studies. But the municipal league study, I'm not sure how they did it, but calling around, the numbers that they provided for that book that we go off of are nowhere near what the actual numbers are of these departments that you call them. And I would venture to say that's probably for every department that we've used to come up with our pay scales. I'd like to end reading the letter that I provided to everyone in your packets. And at the end of that, if you have some discussion on the pay and the scale, I would like to talk about that. But what I did provide in that packet is a pay scale that matches Alma's almost to a T. They don't have corporals, so basically what I did is took the last 3 steps out of patrolman and made that into a corporal. Once they reach that step 8, they would go to a corporal if they stay here for 8 years. And there's only 3 steps to that. And then, of course, to go up after that, they'd have to get promoted to sergeant or above. Gentlemen, as you know, the professional law enforcement has become scrutinized nationally. I personally, as chief, pride myself on the level of professionalism this city department has continually provided to the citizens. I believe the combination of the attack on our profession, the pandemic, and a generational issue has created an extreme shortage of police officers. Just this year, we lost 3 veteran police officers to civilian jobs. Obviously, the pay was attractive, but the reduced stress of exiting this profession was the main reason. We had to go to extreme measures to find replacements for those 3 vacancies. Typically, before the attack on our profession, we would get at least 30 applications for an open position. The last 3 cycles, we have averaged 7 applicants. When concentrating on this last process, we did have 7 applicants. Of the 7 applicants, 2 showed up for the fitness test. 1 and 2 did not complete a quarter of a lap around the track before approaching a medical emergency. He was immediately withdrawn from the process. The second officer was dismissed due to a background issue. As you all know, I was able to reach out to my nephew in New Jersey and get him to apply. We searched through old applications and was able to reach out to Andy Poole, who had applied a few processes ago, and got him to apply. He's a decorated military veteran, and he was hired and is at the police academy right now, same with my nephew. Third position was filled by a Greenwood graduate who had just graduated academy from Springdale Police Department. Fortunately for us, she wanted to come back home and live in this area. So that was our 3 recent hires, none of which come from the actual process when we put out for applications. I reached out to several chiefs while researching this issue. Fort Smith's Police Chief Danny Baker also expressed his concern over pay and lack of applicants. I've included their pay scale. Fort Smith Police Department currently has 27 openings for patrol officer. Fort Smith, who typically has a high volume of applicants, didn't even have a total of 27 applicants for the current process. Fort Smith currently has a submission to increase their pay to be competitive. I wrote this before that article came out, and as Tom pointed out, there was an article in the paper where they did do a study, and it looks like their pay is going to be adjusted. I also reached out to Fayetteville Police Chief Mike Reynolds, who's a friend of mine. Mike stated to me that they recently adopted a sign on bonus of $10,000 in hopes of attracting more applicants. He advised me that his applicant pool went from just over 10 to in the 20s. He's continually battling turnover and has submitted a retention plan to the city administrators. I have included their pay scale in this packet. I spoke to Barling, Tonytown, Van Buren, Allen, and Marlton chiefs. All stated that they were working on salary increases. Tonytown recently paid for a salary study which adjusted their pay scale. Each department named departments that they were trying to be competitive with, as they're all balanced with the same applicants. I must also point out that not only the overall number of applicants has decreased, but the number of quality applicants in that pool has also went down. In these times, it's my belief that we should never lower standards for bodies to fill positions. I can name several departments that, and I can only foresee the future disciplinary issues for them. I can accurately tell you that some of the very applicants we have turned down have been hired by other departments. Most aren't in law enforcement anymore. They've either been fired or resigned. Greenwood has built a strong professional image in the law enforcement community. Just this week, Prosecutor Dan Shue gave high praises of the job done by our men and women. Generally, we face a dire situation of retention and also being an attractive place for the very few applicants out there. Our pay has been on the lower side of the midpoint for pay in our area for some time. We have seen further as cities addressed the issue and adjusted their pay scales for police departments. The minimum wage is quickly approaching our starting pay for patrolmen. A person with no experience can enter Sam's Club and start at $15. This pay is $1.10 less than our current starting pay. Would you add the stress, danger, advance schedule for $2,000 more a year? I plead with you to help me keep this department employed with professional officers. I also plead with you to immediately address the issue. Our officers are constantly contacted by outside agencies and attempts to gain their employment. That speaks volumes about the product we produce here. Help me make a difficult decision to leave, as our pay would be close enough to be competitive. We currently have 2 officers in the process for Arkansas State Police and Arkansas Game and Fish. I've included their pay scales also. Lastly, it has been mentioned before that our officers don't face the dangers of some of these departments I've named. I've personally been shot at more than once. I personally fought individuals over guns that were trying to be pulled on me. This world and area is changing, and we are battling to keep Greenwood as safe as it ever was. I've included a reminder picture of Officer Weiser's car from when it was shot up not long ago. Some of you may have never seen the pictures. I can show you the rest of them if you're interested. The mental health of individuals is decreasing all over the country. It is more prevalent to come in contact with someone with a mental health issue now than ever before. I'd say weekly we come in contact with at least one person that is having some type of medical crisis. Please consider the pay scale that was created to match Allen Police Department. I believe you'll find that it also gets us closer to being competitive with agencies in this area. As always, thank you for your support and consideration. The next page behind that is that pay scale that it matches Allen Police Departments. First, I'd like to go back to the $1.30. If you have any questions about that, like I said, this doesn't add anything for next year's carryover. If everyone has stayed here, this would be the budget salary that would be carried over to next year before any raises were given, obviously. But this doesn't add it. I'm not asking for any more money tonight. This is budgeted money. It's just being spread out to the officers that have stayed here and the few that were hired recently. that pay given to the bottom people just recently hired would bring that number up to the bottom number for the proposed pay scale. So if we could address the $1.30 first, if you have any questions about that, that's what I would ask for, to be spread out among the officers that are currently employed at the police department.
Like a one-time distribution.
I mean, it's always going to be there. It's an increase to their hourly wage.
We're changing the baseline.
Well, this first one doesn't. This first one just gives them a $1.30 bump. And it doesn't add any money to the budget. If the same people had stayed here all year long, that would have been the salary amount carried over for next year's budget.
It would change an individual's current pay though, correct?
Correct.
For next year.
Yes.
You don't have to change the budget to give it to them this year.
Right. Next year,
Certainly
but.
Well, not those 4 people, it wouldn't, because if those 4 that were staying had stayed, that money still would have rolled over. The problem is it potentially affects the new hires. Are you planning on using the new adjusted?
That's why I want it to be the new adjusted.
So that would be any new hires next year, it would impact, should you have any openings. Just to show you how that was calculated, there are 4 actual officers that returned in 2021. The latest one was July 23rd. So you're looking at an annual salary for those 4 of $163,000. That's what was in the budget. You take the number of weeks that are remaining to be paid after their return date, and it was their unpaid salary remaining of $99,164. You take the 4 new hires at their rate of pay. The latest was 3 on 8/16. The number of weeks that are to be paid in 2021 amounted to 56,000. So you take the 99 less than 56, it's $42,492. That is a favorable budget variance by the new hires. What he wants to do is redistribute that to 15 positions of the officers that are existing and hired in the department. And it amounts to $130, $1.30 more. So it's $2,700 and $2,710 basically to each of their employees. Now you're looking at the pay raise going from the current pay being $33,488 goes to $36,198 on a new hire. So those new hires and everybody else is bumped up by the amount of redistributed amount of funds available.
So you're gonna have 4 new positions next year?
No, they've already been rehired.
There's 3 of them.
But those salaries will go
Into next year's budget.
right
Right, but had those.
to the new dollar amount.
To the new dollar amount. But if he didn't have to replace those, in other words, the 4 stayed, your budget would have been neutral all through next year, given everything being equivalent to not having to hire these people. But what it does do is it impacts the base rate of pay for new hires. Because now they're not going to start at $33,488, they're going to start at the revised $36,198. But that can be addressed in the budget, when you see the budget that he's projecting for next year.
And we're thinking that extra $2,000, $3,000 is going to be enough to stimulate the applicant pool?
I know that we are not competitive at all. We've gotten to the point where even Marlin and Boonville are paying more than us to start out. And, as you can see, the last 3 processes where we get 7 applicants and pray that we get 1 out of the 7, which is about the average of what we get. And that's being hopeful. We could lower our standards, probably, and hire people, but I don't want to do that. Somebody wants to do that when I leave here in a couple of years, all to them, but I want to be able to go home at night, lay my head down and know that I trust the people out there doing what they're supposed to do. Almost every department's been sued or lost a lawsuit, and as far as I can remember, as long as I worked here, there hasn't been a police officer sued that we been found to have done something like that. I fully think that that's due to the training that we provide for all our officers, and I just got to the point. I'm sorry?
And good leadership.
I appreciate that. We're starting to lose people in ways that we never have before.
So you're thinking it's money and not just a bad cops and a bad light these days?
I think it's a mixture of everything, and, I mean, it doesn't help that everybody from sergeant down has a second job right now. You know, you lose a lot of time with your family, and then these people go on second jobs, and it's attractive to know that you can go to these overseas and make more money, and, I mean, I don't want to lose any more people, but we're probably going to lose 2 more, and that'll be, I mean, it depends on when that next, I don't want to venture to say the guy that applied for game fish is probably going to get hired too.
Man, if he wants to work for game fish, he needs to come talk to me.
I'm not necessarily opposed to maybe divvying that up across the deal, but, I mean, adopting a new pay scale right now, we're here this close to budget time, I think that's something that we could study and do our own thing. And no disrespect, Will, but, I mean, these other towns, I don't know their incomes, I don't know their revenues, I don't know how they do things. I just don't know, so we have to do what works for us, and I'm not opposed to some of this, I just think that it right here is getting this close to budget time. I mean, if Tom says this will work, to do with what you're wanting to do to bump that up, I personally don't really have a problem with $1.30. But as far as adopting a new pay scale right now for that, I think it would be wise for us to, and I'm just being honest with you, brother, I mean, right here at budget time, I think it would be the best time to come up with our own, and not saying that it's not doable, because it, there may be.
Well, each budget studies, I mean, each year you have to approve the raises, so regardless of what the pay scale is, minus the bottom number, I mean, that's still the lowest out of everybody I just named beside Goshen, if we put it to 36. I mean, look at the number, that's still the
Like I
lowest.
said, I'm
But you have to approve raises in the budget, so this pay scale, I mean, regardless of what it is, they're not gonna get more money unless you prove that at the budget anyway. I want to at least show them that, that the council and the city has their support, and I promise you, I don't know what Farmington does, but Farmington doesn't, I would bet just about anything, doesn't have any more tax base than we do, and their pay is extremely higher than ours. Just the mood at the police department, obviously, it's not all, the city is great, the people in the city are great, they support. If the city was here to vote tonight, I guarantee they would vote for us to get a raise. There was some time, not long ago, where the fire department couldn't get applicants, and we went from per call to per hour pretty quick. And you guys showed support for the fire department, I'm just asking for that same support for the police department tonight, as we were constantly losing people, and the money to train them and retain them, we're losing a lot of money. And there's gotta be something that stops the bleeding. And being the lowest paid department around here, it is certainly not helping to attract them or keep them.
Like you're saying though, I hear you, and I know that's a difficult job trying to, find qualified applicants and trying to, retain those. But also I hear you saying this problem is not unique with Greenwood. Every police, department around this area is having that same kind of problem, despite, their pay. And so it's kind of a universal problem. And, it's unfortunate that, the general society has not recognized the importance of, policing and the service they provide.
But the very few applicants out there are going to go to those higher paid places. Right now, you're not talking about a whole lot of money to try to get up to be competitive with them. The number of applicants are down, but the number of qualified applicants are down. So we're all fighting for very few numbers. And we're talking about a $6,000 difference to start out somewhere else, who goes up a lot higher than us. That's also, it's not rocket science to decide where you want to go.
I fully support, doing a budget analysis and trying to figure out if it, adjusting the pay scale is doable. I'm just a little leery about reallocating those funds or
the unused salaries from the open positions back to the current police force. I mean, reallocating, because you had 4 openings or 3 openings, taking that unspent salary and then redistributing that to your current staff. I mean, that kind of maybe sets a little bit of scary precedence. I mean, what if you had 3 positions in the street department and, you take those salaries that you didn't pay out and then redistribute it amongst who did work that year. That to me is a little scary.
It would cause low morale.
That's the least scary of all, if you ask me. It's money that was going to be paid out next year if people stay here. We're trying to keep them, the ones that are staying here, hopefully. I mean, it's money that would have been carried over for next year's budget if we got them to stay, which is what we're trying to do. I mean, it was money that was going to be there, that, whatever the number is, say it's 800,000. If everybody stayed, it was 800,000 next year. If we distribute this money from them leaving, it's going to be 800,000 next year at the baseline. That's the least concern to me, unless we just count on people leaving every year.
It's just a little bit different than like capital money, capital project money. I mean, that's what can be transferred and split amongst other projects. Salaries are salaries. If you don't fill a position, then that money should be carried over. I mean, to me, it's different.
I'm out of order, but,
Yes, sir.
if you'll allow me to say something, I'll do that, and then, I'll do what you all like me to do, shut up and go home. So, that said, how many people drive the wrong way on 71 at night? Does anybody know? How many high-speed chases do we have in Greenwood? Does anybody know? How many gunshots do we have in Greenwood? Does anybody know? You know why we don't know? Because these people make sure we don't have to know. They make sure that we can live our lives happily and securely every single day. Every day. And you know why they do that? Because they're the best police force in this state, I'll guarantee it. But in addition to that, if we don't take care of the guys that are here, we'll go from being the best to the worst. Just like that. Because if only the dregs will apply here, then only the dregs will be our officers. And if any of you can remember back 10 or 15 years ago, that's what we had. We had a wonderful little handshake, wink, wink, good old boy system. And if you weren't from here, trust me, I know because I wasn't. If you weren't from here, you got nothing. If you were from here, you got away with everything. We actually finally got some integrity in our police force. We actually finally got some decent people. And I know some of those people. You know why I know them? Because one of them works on my cars in his spare time. And the other one cut my grass in his spare time. All due respect, gentlemen, that's disgusting. And that needs to change.
So I amen what Mr. Van Gorder said, and I want to address what Mr. Meeker was referring to, and I understand the look of what the chief is suggesting is redirecting that funds. I agree that it is a little different than the general fund, but I disagree, and I don't. Here's what I tell people in different departments within the city. Not everybody's a police officer, not everybody's a street. If you want to be a police officer, you apply for the police department. If you want to be in the street department, you apply for the street department. And you know when you apply what the salaries are or could be. The clerk mentioned due respect to morale, and I'm all about morale. But if the street department, for instance, not picking on you, Chad, water, sewer, parks, whoever they are, has an issue with redistribution of funds within the police department to the police officers, I will look at that, and I'll tell that gentleman or lady, go apply. And morale is we are all one city, we're all under you guys, but everybody's got different jobs, and therefore they get paid different. I mean, I don't think you should look at it as worried about that from department to department. If the parks guy wanted to be a police officer, they should apply, and vice versa. That's my 2 cents on that.
I don't want this to become an emotional conversation. I completely agree with everything's been said at this point. We've got a great department. I mean, I can tell you what this police department looked like 30 years ago. It wasn't good. I personally, for me, I couldn't follow all the numbers. I mean, that was a lot of numbers. I'm a visual spreadsheet. Where do we fall in relation to everybody else? What does this mean in relation to that? You know, I can't tell you sitting here right this second what our current patrolman starting salary, top salary compared to this. I mean, there's just a lot of numbers to digest. I'm not against pay raises. To AC's point, the problem's bigger than the police department. It's everywhere. McDonald's can't hire people. I mean, all of my vendors that I deal with, they can't get drivers, they can't get people in the factories. There's a problem in this country with hiring, generally speaking. That has nothing to do with Greenwood Police Department. I mean, it's a problem. I think our salaries need to be evaluated, they need to be adjusted. You know, I don't know whether we redistribute this year or not. I can't get my head around that right at the moment either. But, I mean, I think we're all for the police department. I think we're all willing to make changes to the numbers. I just don't want it to become an emotional decision.
Well, and that's good advice, but I would say to what you said about McDonald's, you gentlemen have no say-so in McDonald's. What you have to say-so is in the police department, and the street department, and the sewer department, and the water department.
Well, and I just say that in relation to, there's a problem in the country.
There is, and we don't get to fix those problems. No. What we get to fix, if we can, is the problems before us.
I'd like to, Lance's point, we're out here at budget. And I think, looking at the figures, I like the numbers, and I like to be competitive, and I don't think we're competitive. But I think this is not the only department. I think we need to review all the departments in the city, and I think the administration ought to bring us something here. I mean, we got November, December. Let's look at the whole city. Let's make sure we're competitive in all these areas. But I do, right now, with the figures he's provided us, I do feel like we're not competitive, and we should be competitive. But that doesn't mean we need to do a knee-jerk reaction tonight. I think, yeah, we're here at just about budget. And I don't know if budget's going to be so complicated we need to do this before the process or at the end of the process. But I do think that the administration should bring us figures on every department. We do have figures now on the police department. I think that could be consolidated, maybe where it's a little easier to look at, where we could see where exactly we need to be, especially with all the positions. And then look at the general staff here, look at street department staff, see where we're at. We need to look at the fire department. We haven't done anything fire department for years. And we're losing people. I guarantee you we're losing people. We got problems there too. But to Daniel's point, yeah, this is a worldwide, this is a nationwide problem.
It is, but yes, sir.
Let me just jump in here. There's a couple of things on the table right now. One, he's discussing the redistribution in a budget neutral sense for his employees. His revised pay stays within your quote matrix. That's not affecting it at all. I don't think he was asking for this event, this redistribution of $42,000 to affect a revamping of the next budget steps, or what do you want to call the matrix. That's a separate issue, and he's just giving you information to say it's coming. As far as what he's trying to do is retain. He's not trying to attract right now. He's trying to retain what he has, because he's already told you he's got 2 people that are getting ready to possibly look for jobs in other departments, if not private sector. So if this is what he feels is something for his staff that would retain, and it's budget neutral, I think that's a no-brainer. But that's just my 2 cents of it. Now I want you to know right now, he is $451,000 favorable against his budget, right now. 450. If you take 42,000 off of that, it's still well over $400,000 to the good from the budget you approved.
Goes back to what I said, I didn't have a problem doing that, but I wasn't ready to do any kind of pay scale and stuff like
Right,
that.
I don't think that's.
I didn't, that's all I summed it up pretty quick while going to beat the dead horse.
It's two separate things.
I'm just saying, the pay schedule stuff,
The pay-
we're too close to budget.
Absolutely.
You know,
Wait till-
the
wait till
redistributing
budget.
that money, it's in his budget.
Yep.
I personally don't have a problem with that, but making a decision on who to pay scale for the police department, no.
That's why adding to Rod's point, last year for sure, that was the most contentious subject at the budget, was pay and raises and all that, remember that?
Yes.
We need to have a pay scale discussion separate from the budget. I mean, that's a whole discussion into itself, so we don't go through that.
Would it be better to have it before, like next month, for the whole city?
Can we put the scale to the side? The
Yeah,
dollar,
that's different.
$1.30.
You got two things.
I mean, it doesn't affect the budget going into next year. It allows me to go back and say, the council sees that there's an issue. I think the numbers I gave you, I know there's a lot of them, that's why I put it in the packet, so if you picked it up, you could go through it before time. But all the numbers, I mean, you see our bottom line, if you just look at the bottom line, no other numbers, we're way off from starting pays, even with, this is gonna bring us up close to Barling's starting pay. Who's in our county, who has half our officers. And I mean, I'd venture to say with them, their tax base can't be any higher than ours. But this allows me to go back and, yeah, I mean, the morale department, our department, just because of the outside influences in the country has been bad, and they're going to second jobs, and this will show that I think you guys are in agreement and working towards trying to make us competitive and paying us something that's respectable for our profession. I know the state of Arkansas is one of the lowest paid for law enforcement, probably any profession. But this will allow me to go back in our department meeting and say, they allow, and for 20-something years, we haven't asked you to do this. This is a one-time deal where we came back and said we lost these people. There's this difference in money I'd like to redistribute and try to retain these people. Even, I mean, the time is of the essence for the two that are applying for outside to try to say, hey, we're working towards getting the pay where it needs to be, and here's this right now. And then hopefully there's room for the scale. But right now, it'll allow them to go back and say, guys, maybe this will, I don't think allow them to quit their second job that much, but you're talking about, what, $2,000 difference overall pay. So if they got a second job, they're obviously making more than that, but it's at least a step in the right direction.
I'm sorry, dumb this down for me. The difference that you were talking about, where did it come from?
So say, let's take Sergeant Pippin, for example. If he was making $18 an hour and the person coming in is making $16, then there's the $2 difference in
It's the
his
variance for those who left and those who were hired.
Right.
Okay, sorry.
So that's why the carryover is no different. If we kept them, the example I gave was $800,000.
It's not that we didn't replace them, you've replaced all of those.
We've replaced everything.
It's just the
We're
variance.
fully staffed as of right now.
Okay, all right.
So that number would have been the same had they stayed, or you redistribute this $1.30. That number carryover, my magical number was $800,000. Whether they stayed, it was $800,000. Whether you distribute this $1.30, that's $800,000. Nothing goes up. It's the same money carried over that would have been in next year's budget.
And all people that would get this money are still within their matrix.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Nothing
basically,
goes out of the matrix.
lieutenants and below, so the captain and I are not included on this.
The matrix that you gentlemen worked extremely hard on last year, 3-4 meetings. So it's not like you haven't done a lot of work on it.
Everybody's still inside the matrix.
Absolutely. And I'm going to ask Tom a question, and I may be wrong here. Tom, it's because you touched on something that made me think too, because, you know, setting precedences that's a thing. You need to watch what you do. Has there not been an occasion within another department that one time or another we took some money Danielle may be able to help too. Took some money that was left over for a salary that we did something else with for another employee.
I thought we did it in the police department.
I think we did it in the street department too.
And the police
We did it to retain a mechanic one time.
Thank you. So it's not a new, although it's more, but it's not a new precedent. It's something that we have done before. Police probably, but certainly you're right, the mechanic, that's exactly what it
There's
was.
there's special, there's been some special
Yeah,
deals where you had somebody that was highly trained,
yeah.
and that was,
And we didn't go over budget, we just used funds that were available for whatever reason.
you know, we
Right.
used.
But
Within
it's
budget.
still come out in the budget, Officer A was approved for X in the budget. You're modifying the budget to be whatever this number is, this dollar there. A, B, C, and D. They're in the budget, some line, right?
Yes.
Whatever the number is, we want to modify the budgeted number to X.
Which turned out to be $1.30 per officer. That's within their pay scale, which was 15 now, which is more than.
Yeah, but I think it's real important to understand, and you just said it, or somebody did it, you're not going out of the pay scale with this. You're doing it in the end of the year, but you're not going out of the boundaries that you set. Right?
Correct.
So you're raising per hour, not getting lump sums?
Right. Which we don't do that anymore. We got told by auditors that you don't do that. lump sum.
Oh, that's why, that's not being proposed?
That's correct.
I have no problem with that.
Well, but in essence, we are raising the current matrix up $1.30.
No, you're not. You're staying within the matrix.
You're not changing the matrix, you're just
You're
changing.
just giving a raise.
I'm asking to change it, but not in this conversation.
Later, when the budget starts, he's gonna come back to you for that question. Right now, you're giving $1.30 an hour raise
So those are
to those that are already in there. Not,
They're making 34, they're making 36 now, less.
You say started at this
it's a raise. It's paper.
It's not
Got
over.
10 an hour included.
The money's there. You're not, he's not asking for more money.
So you're saying too that you're fully staffed now, and you're not looking at adding on any new bodies.
Well, if it's too late for state jobs, I will. If it's too late for state jobs, we'll be back in the process of
Right,
trying to.
but I mean, you're not trying to, like I said, I don't know how many we have right now, we have 27, or how many do we have?
20.
20? And so you're not saying, hey, I need to bring on 2 more, so we have 22 next year.
CID needs help, and I'm sure Jody will tell you that, but there's nowhere to pull it from. I mean, the new census brings us down to 2.1, which is below the state average, but right now, I'm worried about the people that are here, and we'll figure that out. And if we need to ask for somebody, I mean, that's a later conversation. Right now, I'm worried about the people that are here. I'm tired of seeing these guys working second jobs.
Just police officers, it's not support staff.
Correct.
Do we need a motion for this?
Yeah, I mean,
I got one more comment.
No.
I usually go home and.
budget neutral.
We were bringing it to your attention because we didn't want to do it without discussing.
We discussed this and said, Tom and I, for sure, he and Chief and Tom, Will and I,
My comment was.
we could have, and I'm not, this is not any kind of, we could have done this without permission.
My
But
comment
it's
to them
important
was,
that you support.
you guys made the comment that, I mean, as long as you stay within the scale, and it wasn't adding money, so when I went to the mayor, I was like, honestly, I said, I don't know why we have to bring it to council, so then the budget that they approved, it's the money approved, and all I'm doing is giving it to the other guys instead of, it was going to, they left me, so.
Well, because it's salaries, it's kind of like a contract in my opinion. And the auditors read the minutes, and as
I
salaries,
talked-
it may be best to have.
I talked to the auditor, but we're doing what we're doing.
That was my 2 cents.
We're doing it though. We're not hiding it.
Yeah, we didn't want it, we
We're not hiding it.
wanted
We're
to
right.
bring it to your attention.
So if we hadn't have, then talk about that, but we're not. So,
Well, I'm in agreement for the record.
okay.
If you want to vote on it, go ahead.
But but it's council meeting, I'm not gonna stop you.
Yeah, make a motion and do it.
Make a motion, we'll vote on it.
Well,
I made a motion.
we got a motion and a second
To do what?
to allow him to do what he's.
Because he's not, I mean, he's staying within the deal, and it's just for the patrol officers, and it's money already in the budget, so when he wants to do this pay schedule, that's a whole other conversation when budget time comes.
Yes, we have a motion.
All I'm making a motion is to do is just
Redistribute.
redistribute that $1.30, and it goes to the lieutenant down, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And nobody at the max.
Nobody's at the max.
Got it. I have to word a motion a certain way, that's why I'm asking clarifying. And Daniel seconded.
Yes.
Ms. Terry,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Ms. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Meeker,
Yes.
Tim Terry.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Aye.
You're up. You're up. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Obviously with three people in the academy, and various times we've had people quarantined, at least 2 at a time. One person deployed to Germany, one person deployed to New Orleans. We've been extremely short, whereas one person's been out by themselves quite a bit lately, probably even tonight. But we're trying to obviously get away from that with the things that occur in town. And the CARES Act money that we took in, obviously we used our hours that we worked last year during COVID. And I do know that according to this CARES Act, it can, allowable projects to purchase include, let's see, medical personal protective equipment, hiring, supplies, gloves, masks, sanitizer, training, travel expenses, and dress and medical needs of inmates. We don't have that problem, but the big thing for me is allows overtime. And we've always used comp time, and we've never had this much comp time built up due to the shortages that we have. The 3 in the academy won't be on the road by themselves until March of next year, obviously. And one of our new hires, well, obviously the one, is pregnant, and she will be on limited duty here in probably a month. So that'll put us down another one. And basically, long story short, or trying to shorten this up, is that we're short, and I'm asking for some of that CARES Act money to go towards exactly what it was. One use is for overtime, and to allocate, I would ask for hopefully 50,000 will get us into next year if we can carry that over also, and if I need to get more, or able to get more, come back and ask for it, but 50,000 is, I think, a fair number to ask for overtime to help me get past our shortage, and pray that the 2 people don't leave me in the process. But please allow me to get some of that CARES Act money for overtime, to pay these guys when they work overtime. Asking them to come out for comp time, that used to work, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's hard to get people to come out for comp time, and I believe that we're the only department that uses comp time, and everyone budgets for overtime. I haven't done that in the past because I haven't wanted to add to our budget, but the times have changed, and this, I mean, just the other day, I pulled over someone that was positive. Of course, they never tell me up front, but I got her out of the car because she was wanted also, and she was nervous, and I was wanting to search her car, and I get her out of the car. This time, luckily, I wasn't close enough to her, but she's like, I'm positive COVID, and here's my positive test, and I said, see you later. But, you know, the amount of times that I think we just went on before, I think the lady was probably positive, but the times of coming in contact with people that are positive is definitely increasing, and we get these guys to come out to help us cover shifts. I like to be able to pay them instead of giving them comp time, which we can't allow them to get off because we're so short. I mean, we've been holding back vacations and their comp time because we're so short. So this will help us get past that, and hopefully get the vacation time burned, so we're not carrying over vacation and getting in trouble for that also. So please consider, I'm asking for 50,000 of the, I guess, 1.9 million we got last year.
It's part of our money though, not, they're 2 different things.
Yeah.
Like Luke is saying,
where do we stand on that?
Well, first, comp time is not something you can decide not to pay. Comp time is overtime that's transferred into an hour and a half or 1.5 hours times the number of overtime hours. So it's given back to them in time off that they can use and still get paid for it, but they're banking now 1.5 times what they worked as overtime. But now the deal is that according to their own policy, they can only carry over an employee is, the non-exempt employee is over 40 hours. So once they hit 40, the next payroll, when we see they have 50-something hours on it, they're supposed to be paid because they can only carry 40 hours on the comp time side. That's their policy.
Without my approval, I think it says.
It says with approval, it's 80.
Yeah.
Okay, now after they get to 80 in their bank of comp time hours, it's paid. And you don't lose it because even though it says accrued, it's actually earned. That is time that they've actually worked. So you have one employee right now that has 133.25 hours. We didn't know that until today. So we need to immediately cut the check for anything over 80, and they get paid it. So your overtime, it's there. I mean, I just don't understand why most employees in the city can opt for either pay me the overtime or go to comp time. They have the option. So why police doesn't have the option, I don't understand that. Is that just something in your policy?
It's always been that way.
Well, you should change that. I mean, why is another employee in the city, and maybe you can answer that, they get the option, right?
They do.
Overtime or not, and they can change it anytime they want, basically.
It's just always been like that as far as I've been in that position.
You're just asking to go to the ops.
It's always been that way. I'm not saying it hasn't. So we don't know of any reason why police departments,
I don't.
that's not state government mandated police block fee, something.
They have their own handbook and we have a handbook, so it's all separate.
So if it's not, then
We can research that. but,
Yeah.
I mean, he's asking to go to where they can get paid the overtime. And
I don't want it to build up anymore. Like I said, it's hard to get people off. We've had them waiting for someone to get back from Germany or.
I don't know.
So do you have to give them so many hours, or is that just a choice?
It's
I know you say
anything over
40.
anything over 40 is overtime.
Well, I mean,
80. Well, anything over 80.
Anything over 40 in a week.
Especially under circumstances. I mean, we've not been able to let people off because it just put the city at such a shortage.
But if you pay them, I mean.
So it's broken.
Pay them now or later.
That's
You
what I'm
gotta pay
saying.
them.
It's not if it ain't broke. It is broke.
Time happening, it's been over 40.
Yeah.
That's where you want.
So it is broken, we can fix it.
Back when Chief Hicks was here, we were, doing payroll, and he did the overtime. He calculated the overtime because it's different than that 40-hour-a-week thing. Police was on a different calculation, and I've never known it. I've never known how to calculate it.
Was
It's
it
based on
880?
24 hours and something else.
Might have been 8 maybe.
It's something. I don't know. I never knew. And
That
so
sounds
we've
like
never
something
even
y'all need to,
calculated it.
y'all need to fix.
Yes.
I mean,
We book.
Sounds like anything else.
On the balance sheet, we just provided the numbers to the legislative audit, as a matter of fact, because the amount that's sitting out there in unpaid vacations or the amount of sick time that will basically be paid out and the amount of comp time, we have to give them the numbers as the employees have earned it. And we book that as a liability on our balance sheet. So it's there, you're gonna pay it. You're either gonna pay it now or you're gonna pay it later. And it doesn't hit the books of the actual department ledger until such time as they use it.
none of this would make any difference with lot fee.
No, lot fees is retirement, but it does make a difference to them because, I mean, they go based on salary. Right?
I mean, you gotta pay that percentage.
You gotta pay that percentage.
But-
Bottom line is there's.
We have a resolution, I just want to say, we have a resolution that dedicated that ARPA money to only be spent on water and sewer infrastructure. But if you change your mind, we'll need to do the
Does the resolution cover the second tranche? If that's what it's called.
See, I don't know, because I wasn't here when you actually voted that to be restricted to water sewer, but did you just do the 970?
That's what I'm asking. Is it
Yes.
Okay, so
So
there's
there's another
payment this year.
$900,000 coming that is not,
July.
unless it's restricted, is it?
But didn't you say they were like 400,000 to the?
That's the first tranche.
Okay, so
There.
you're
So
good on
that
that.
number, that stuff we voted on had nothing to do with, there was no overtime at all involved. There was only like 3 or 4 things where that money.
Premium pay is what he's talking about. Premium pay is eligible,
Water sewer is what you dedicated that to,
the first tranche.
infrastructure, but you got another almost $1 million.
We were super limited on what we could dedicate it to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but premium pay was in that.
It's
Yes.
part of it,
It's an overtime
yeah,
thing.
but you just didn't,
I voted against it.
Well, I mean, Tom said they were doing good with their budget, so if he needs.
you got another $1 million coming
Like
to address what
He
he's.
said there was like 450,000 to the,
Right.
I mean, if he needs to pay that stuff, I mean.
We already know, I'm sorry, we know we're getting the second tranche, I love that word now that I've used it. When's it coming?
July, end of July.
And regarding the reasons, it's in the resolution, premium pay for eligible workers is the very first thing, it says it in there.
Right.
So,
I
it's not
guess
like
I agree
it's-
with Lance though, I mean, they're already kind of like a surplus in the police department, and so.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, that's something I think Chief, Tom, and the mayor need to set up and work out, because it's in the budget, I mean, if you need to be paid overtime, I mean, that's not a really debatable, debatable subject, I mean, from where I come from, so y'all, I think y'all just need to.
We'll fix it.
Higher ups there need to sit down.
Change the policy.
Higher up as in Danielle.
Yes, I agree with somebody. We're gonna need to address the policy.
Yeah.
And then
So the
we
policy-
find out if
Yeah, but
It's
that's,
illegal.
So the policy's gotta come back, I think, to you guys for approval, yeah? Yes?
So we should put the policy on for next
Yep.
month.
We do that?
The police policy, like, bring a change to it?
Yes.
Because I believe they have to approve that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, they-
And then can we do like we do the non-uniformed, where it's up to each employee how they want it, whether they want to just
I would think so.
accrue comp time or get overtime at the time?
That's the way the rest of the city is,
Right.
just treat everybody the same.
I agree.
Not have unique departments and
Tom
that.
Yes.
said this, they're gonna get paid one way or
They're
the
right.
other. Y'all just need to look it up.
I don't know if there's an across the blanket treat everybody the same, but when we talk about pay, I guess you could. Or across the board, you know what I'm saying?
You mean in all aspects, you mean in all aspects?
Well, I mean,
It's tough.
sorry.
Well, no, I agree. I mean, it's, like I said a while ago, if you want to work in the street
If we're
department, you
on
have to apply
overtime
for
versus
it.
comp, I think we just ought to treat all of them the same.
Well, that, yeah. All right, it's broken, we're gonna fix it. Are we voting?
No, it's
No,
needed, I don't
no,
know.
that policy.
That's,
I'd say, like, if it's in the budget, I mean, they have a surplus.
If it's in there, I don't know where that number's coming from, obviously, the proving of $1.30, I'm sure cuts into that.
We're, like, the one that's 133 right now, she's gonna get a big check. Because based on your policy, anything over 80, we have to pay. So we take that, anything extra or over 80, and we convert it to time and a half and pay it. Whatever those are, now, it's not time and a half because the 133 is already time and a half. We gave an extra half hour, half time.
So somebody's gonna be pleasantly surprised.
Would it be their
They all
choice?
are.
Is
They
it
all
their
get
choice,
it.
Tom, to be paid for all of it, or just be paid back down to 80?
Back down to 80,
Okay, by their policy.
by their
current
policy, yes.
Unless that policy changes.
Right, and now we're assuming that you gave permission because they are over the 80 hours, and that's why we assume. But you're gonna have to, you pretty much blanket everybody.
Just say yes.
Well, you couldn't get people off, and then obviously CID keeps doing investigations and gets called out, and, I mean, can't tell them not to come out.
But the overtime for your.
Well, that's fine for paying them off, but making sure I wanted an overtime bank going forward so we can keep these numbers down.
And we'll watch the budget,
Right.
yeah. You can put it in the budget, it's just a.
Well, that's for next year, I'm talking about for
Payouts.
right now, so none of these numbers keep going up.
You are actually this year paying out comp time as overtime to your officers that exceed this
I
budget.
go where that, no.
You are already doing it. You just don't have a number in there for people to see, but it is there. You are paying it. The actual is showing you're paying it. So we just need to put the budget to that actual.
Good. Thanks,
Good,
Chief.
thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks, gentlemen. Number 11 is Planning Department. Got an ordinance here, 1201, that's all I wrote. Really?
Well, does everybody have a copy of this? Council, Mayor, Mr. Terry, this ordinance here is repealing and replacing ordinance number 1201. It's our floodplain ordinance. Hunter went through a meeting this last week, and FEMA has presented us with this ordinance. It's an update of our ordinance 1201. We would like to get this approved by you guys. It gives us a lot more teeth in our enforcement penalties and violations. It's just a better ordinance than what we had. They're recommending that we pass this with an emergency clause. One reason I agree with that is that we have some projects that are getting ready to start that we need to apply this to with their permitting. And do you have any questions? Hunter's here. He can answer the questions. He likes that. He just.
How has it changed?
Hunter, would you like to address that?
Sure.
So basically, the entire enforcement section of this is 100% revised. What we had prior was barely nothing. It just said I could go out there and violate, name a violation, and this gives actual penalties. And that's really all that's changed.
Section 13B, the penalties, that's what's really changed.
Yes.
For the most part, it's the same as it was before,
Yes.
other than the penalties.
I added one section to the section 12. I added that in. It was not in the previous ordinance. It did not name who the floodplain administrator would be. So if I were to leave, which I'm not, it falls onto the mayor or someone that he appoints or designates.
So what, is this just about building or moving dirt in floodplains or?
Yes. So section 6, letter D, tells you everything that it applies to. They call it development.
Letter what?
D.
We've had some projects that have been built in our floodplain, and we've got some areas that Hunter is going to have to enforce some of these.
Like the dump on the other side of the creek.
I can't enforce that, that's outside city limits, but I've taken that to the state.
There's this much that's in, it's ours, but the rest of it's out.
There's some issues with some property on Homer Street, Denver Street. We had the issue with the car lot there on Denver that was put the metal building up without a permit in the floodplain and on and on and on. But we've got some other projects that are coming up in areas that we want to make sure that we can enforce these new regulations.
And this gives me the ability to go out there and disconnect our water.
And it's getting more important that we're on top of this, because as Mr. Bell gets to his office, if they don't come to my office, or people wanting to know about property to put things on, a lot of stuff being called about, so, and then a lot of floodplain areas, so he's got to be on top of this stuff. about the news food court?
The guy who's developing next to the food court.
Yeah, we will.
Oh, that Meeker guy. There's so
I'm not naming names.
There's so many of those guys.
Yeah. Are they still developing there? It's still gone.
I don't know what he's doing. He's just pushing dirt around.
Pushing dirt around.
I don't know what he's doing.
But again, if this property behind the city hall was in the city limits, this would apply to
I
him.
mean, he's not flying under the radar, I promise you, but everybody in this town believes that that is the city's property for some reason. That they ordered.
I'm sure he'll sell it to you for pretty good.
He told me he would, yeah.
So the emergency, I don't quite get the emergency. Is that what we're talking about? The Makerville over, is that the emergency?
No, not necessarily. I've got a development coming up that I would like to have the more stringent
And that development
enforcement on if needed.
really, really quick. Or
Yeah,
it's in the planning stage.
It's not really about development. They use that word, but even just moving fill dirt or grading, anything that affects the current floodplain. I mean, even if you were to store a tractor in the floodplain, I have the ability to enforce it.
So the emergency is something's happening. And-
Yes.
And if this is passed in 3 months, it'll have already happened.
I've got someone wanting to move dirt in a few weeks, that if they do something against this ordinance, I'd like to have the ability to enforce it. A little bit more strongly.
So the only difference, you said, those were penalties, right?
Correct.
Did they get a permit already?
Yes and no, so we're in the still planning stages.
So it's not a permit. You know?
I can do that, yeah. And if they still go out there and move dirt, I mean, there's not really a permit required to remove less than an acre.
Oh, less than that.
Yeah, so I mean, if they're not disturbing less than an acre, no permit required, such as the Meeker property.
Did y'all give him a permit?
Haven't been able to keep in contact.
I'll give you his number.
Thanks, sir.
Jeez Louise. Well, I guess he's super nice.
Is it best to put the emergency clause in section 15 or put the emergency clause up there in the title?
It's supposed to be in the title and in the last section, though,
Okay.
so it needs to be edited to reflect it in the title.
Now,
If
this-
you do that.
This is basically an ordinance that they provided us with.
Yeah, this is just a model ordinance that I transferred our older information as far as dates and some other titles and.
This is just this is their model or just.
Even down to the emergency clause, that's there.
I make a motion we put this on for the first reading by title only.
Second. Motion and second, first reading title only.
Lance Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
It's unanimous. An ordinance repealing and replacing Greenwood ordinance number 12-01 and all other ordinances in conflict therewith, establishing a flood damage prevention program for the city of Greenwood, declaring an emergency and for other purposes. You do want an emergency, right?
Make a motion, we need to suspend the rules and then waive the second and third reading.
Second.
Motion second, suspend the rules.
Lance Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion to adopt ordinance.
Second. Motion second to adopt.
Lance Terry? Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Make a motion to enact the emergency clause of this ordinance.
Second.
Motion and second to enact emergency clause.
Lance Terry?
Sure.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
No.
Mr. Baker? Tim Terry?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Passes by majority.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. You gonna get a phone number from Mr. Hunter? Yep. Mr. Meeker?
Get you a ticket, look, Will.
Are they just
Sit
picking
back
on,
up.
are
be there. All right. Can you come in uniform also?
Are we supposed to be with the cell tower?
Yes, sir. That's right. Well, yes, sir.
That area?
That area. I believe that is all down in the agenda. Council or department reports, questions, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I have a question for the street department.
Yes, sir. Mr. Rice, would you come forward, please?
I'd love to. Short and sweet. And I told you guys to come find you, but I've got a gentleman asked me, he's gonna be working on a driveway at the corner of Eagle and Chisholmville. And he's gonna need to do some coning while he's working on their ditch or expand the driveway wider. And he said, do I need to talk to the city or the county? I said, well, that side of the street, city, I'm assuming, because it's curved.
The Eagle side is in Chisholmville.
I think
City, yes. Anything on the north side.
Okay, so he's gonna be on Chisholmville. He wanna know if he needs to come talk to you about putting some cones up to kind of deter the traffic while shouldn't be long, but he may be sticking out in the road while he's cleaning or rebuilding the ditch or whatever the driveway.
That's fine. I mean, anything, cones, signs, we go.
We don't charge much for coming to do it.
Don't charge a thing, just sign a release.
I think he may have his own cones, but I'll tell him to come find it. That's, I just want to throw
As long as it don't interfere with the upcoming car show, so.
There you go.
Way out there.
Because they've already got rolled.
Yes.
Oh, cone wise, that's correct.
And burger.
They said the one that actually went real well last weekend.
That was a cruise, wasn't it?
Yeah,
We gotta get a cruise going. As soon as I get my 2 trucks out of the shop.
Gotcha.
If anybody wants to contribute to that. Anything else for Mr. Kraus? Give him a quick update on, Whitetail. Yes, sir.
Whitetail, they currently have the box culverts, they are installed. Working on cul-de-sac right now, they should have half of it done. I'm gonna say they'll probably finish pouring what they need to tomorrow, we'll put half of that finished. I went out there today and had some questions on some grades, but we got that ironed out. So I'm hoping by the end of next week, they should be done with the cul-de-sac and then move back to the bridge and finish the head walls and wing walls.
I'd suggest anybody, or all of you gentlemen, to go out there and look at that when you get through. That's under the supervisor of Mr. Kraus, but it's fine.
Good one.
Good one, so look at, see what they got going on. We'll say something popular. Good one is good, right? They did a good job, and I want to just say, on their behalf, I thought this was just pretty good of them. Becky, or I'm sorry, that's his wife.
Becky.
Griffith.
Becky. Oh, Tony?
Tony's brother, as you know, Dean passed away recently, and due to his death, there were a lot of cars coming and going to it. Tony and Becky's house, and Griffith ceased their construction to accommodate that traffic, and understood what had happened, so I thought that was pretty decent.
Everything's gone pretty smooth. I cannot remember the people's name, the big 2-story house.
The dentist.
The dentist, yeah.
Bransmere.
Sir?
Bransmere.
That was it, yes. So,
They may complain about their garage doors, I don't know.
some people from Texas had moved in. People from Texas moved in, and people were up there to start working. They found that's on the fence, so we had to shut it down until I got the proper paperwork to show them that. So they did not disclose that in the sale.
Yeah.
So, but that's all been taken care of, so I think everything will be fine.
I had one for.
My only complaint is I haven't been called when there's wet concrete to put my name in it. Go ahead. Mr. Martin.
The fire department did a exercise out here, and out there on that parking lot right there, I guess, I don't know what you call it, but.
Between the two buildings?
Yeah, it's, water just stands there, and I'm wondering if you still kind of, at that, I don't know, call it the northeast corner, kind of made it a little open ditch or whatever to drain out there where the creek is standing there.
Is it in conjunction with the fence that's there, or is it gonna be?
It's kind of,
The water's gathering up where it gets back there into the grass.
Between the concrete and the
The
fence.
ground is higher than the concrete, so it gathers up.
Sure, we can dig that up. I'm digging up the-
No.
just right through that corner, you just kind of hit it, to me, like over there to the fence.
It's where the trail ends and the privacy fence runs east and west in that corner where the parking lot is. It stands right there.
So it's where the skate park's supposed to be.
Yeah,
Well, I thought Stewart was gonna put some new concrete.
Yeah, what happened here?
There's a skate park back there.
What happened
But
here?
anyway, when it rains, it stands.
Seriously, there was some consideration of that being concrete and extending your drive. Huh?
Yeah, and then if we're back here.
Okay,
Just leave it alone, get on the splash pad.
there you go. Mini splash pad. Anything else for Mr. Graff?
We do need to extend.
Going once, all right.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else? Easy targets.
Bill,
Mr. Bell?
I don't know if it's my business or not, but, boy, I just gotta know what $1 million project's going on 215 Webster Street.
Oh,
What was the question?
I gotta know what $1 million project's going on 215 Webster Street.
What about it?
I just wonder what's going on. Is there a remodel or a new house being built? or-
That's Mark Dean's house.
Oh.
That's a big old honking now.
He sold his, I guess the sale is complete. He did the big house.
Yeah, he sold the one
And
on
then
that.
he built the barn there, and they're living in that while they're building there. How many square feet? 80?
8,802 on the roof, 5,330.
Just a little summer place.
I just, when I see $1 million project cost at Webster Street, that caught my eye.
You thought it was Rod, didn't
He
you?
thought it was right.
Or a meter?
Wait a minute, so I'm on the wrong Webster Street.
Charlie Jones is over house.
Huh?
Charlie
Charlie
Jones property.
Oh, well, okay.
Have you not seen it?
You know what, I just drove by there today.
Go look at that thing.
How'd you not assume it was me?
Well, for some reason, I was thinking Webster was back up here on, in the top of Home Edition somewhere, like up around the Elm area.
how long you lived here?
I try to stay out of Warren.
I bet your wife.
That's why I get over there.
I'm trying to stay out of that water.
Evidently, it's $1 million home. We ain't got any of that.
There's a half a $1 million barn set beside it.
Yeah.
Barn median.
Yeah, that's all, okay, I just wanted,
It's pretty,
Mark's a good friend of mine.
it's pretty impressive. I think it was
I
300.
did his barbecue.
No, I'm not gonna, never mind. All right. Anything for, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know that I saw a lot of you other than the firemen. So I'm gonna scold a few of you. You guys need to show up at a fall festival and a Freedom Fest. Tammy Briley, Parks Director Tammy Briley, has taken some notes from the two Parks Directors ago and has made some good decisions. I skipped Richard McKinney. And there was pending 100% rain, and it slowly degraded to 40 or 50, and it finally rained at the end of the day. But the day before the fall festival was to take place at Bell Park, Ms. Briley called me and got my opinion, and we talked, and she made a decision bright and early the next morning, the day before, to move said festival to the fairgrounds, under roof, still outdoorsy, to be protected by inclement weather. One of the best falls festivals, man, you don't gotta go back a few years to get a really good one, but one of the best fall festivals I ever attended. She had 47 or so vendors, a band, bounce arounds, and every vendor that showed up got a stall, if you will, in the animal barn, and it was perfect. It was sawdust on the floor. You felt like you were at a country fall festival. Yeah, and it was excellent. And it rained on it late in the day. The firemen ran like little girls. Scared the water. But we had police department there, rookies that did the, I'm stealing your thunder here from your report, I guess, but they were there to accommodate folks carrying their goods, doing anything and everything they could do. Tammy, of course, was there. Danielle showed up late in the day and, barely got anything out of her. Tanya was there at 6 a.m.
She
Stayed till the
was. She
very end
absolutely was.
of
She
the, when I
stayed
showed
all
up with the truck to haul some stuff off, she was mad, and she was there 12 or 13 or 14 hours, as Tammy was. Seriously, and when Miss Cinda Bell, who we know about Bell Park, right? And we're grateful, and it's always been a Bell Park Fall Festival, always. It was not a Bell Park Fall Festival, it became a Fall Festival, Greenwood Fall Festival at the fairgrounds. Miss Cinda Bell and Miss Teresa Burchett, I met coming down the hill, just visiting, talking, and she stopped me, she said, this is reminiscent of when back in the 50s, late, early 60s, when the fairground was right over there, and they had it wasn't a fall festival, but it was the arts and crafts show in the barn of the, and she goes, this is very reminiscent, and she was happy as a lark. So I told Tammy, I said, you know, good luck with moving it out of Bell Park, but she was thrilled, and I think everybody that was there was thrilled, except maybe the people that I stopped pretending to be a disc jockey, interviewing them with a dead mic. That's a whole other story, and I'll share it with you later. Excellent job to the Parks Department, the Fire Department, the Police Department, Street Department. I think everybody was there pretty much to help get it going, but it was awesome. So, gosh, you guys come and check those things out, and they did good. Like I said, I know fire was there.
There was two representatives from the street department and my guys and the police.
Well, you had a whole bunch of street guys there earlier to carry the stage, which I basically
Oh,
can't
that
handle
was the day,
myself.
that was on Friday, yes.
Friday
Yes, on
before,
Friday,
day
they
before,
helped,
yeah.
they helped.
But
do
festival
some
day, you had everybody back.
Yes, yes.
It was awesome.
They did a great job.
So I think there's some consideration, in my opinion, to keep it there or to build a like barn in Middle Park. But anyway, that's another deal. But it worked out really well. If we could talk the fair board into building another barn just like that, so she can expand to 70 or 80 members, it'll happen.
And with you the senior citizens center.
Absolutely, the barn, yes. That's right, put us in stalls. And when I say us, I mean Mike and I, right? All right.
There's lots of parking available.
Sir?
There's lots of parking available.
Parking's everywhere. The only vendor that didn't get a lot of action because there was not room for her, Miss Brenda Gann, who always approaches me about putting something, used to be horseshoes back in the day. This time it was the cornhole game, and I said, bring it on, and she had a couple, she ended up having to be down in the barn right below it, behind the fire department. She didn't get much action because typically, most people parked where they parked at the fair, came in another gate. So we're gonna position her somewhere, hopefully next year, where they can walk by her. But other than that, everybody, I don't know, I didn't talk to the vendors, I think that everybody I talked to, and I talked to most of them, were thrilled. And they may not have sold a lot of goods, they were just.
There was a lot of the vendors sold completely out.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So good job.
I have one more question, and I should know this, but I don't. I know our sewer guy's not here, or the water guy. I had a question about if a guy, just hypothetically, let's say.
Oh, Charlie, he shared a booth. I don't know, did you sell everything?
I want $500.
Did you pay your, oh, that's not anything.
Yes, under 600.
Checker pocket. If a guy puts in a sewer line on it out of his own pocket to an area he's wanting to develop or to his business, and it travels through, I don't know, 150 yards, let's say, where he's tied on it. And let's say there's other businesses want to tie on to that line he's laid. Does the gentleman that puts it in the ground get any?
Reap benefits from that?
Or is it just thanks for putting it in, everybody's on time?
I think we ran into that on, about there at Webster, where, you know.
Behind the law firm?
Yep. And I don't think that was kosher, yeah, no.
Yeah, there was something unique about that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it was,
we allowed him to run a line and tie in.
Is this the Webster Street again?
This is Ware Road.
Oh, Ware Road.
We're talking about something out into the industrial park.
Industrial.
And the guy lays a sewer line.
Oh.
To
I may
his
know
business.
who you're talking about.
Right?
I might know who you're talking about. I don't know the answer. We'll get it for you. I don't know the answer.
I thought we abandoned all that. Remember, years ago,
Webster?
there were a bunch of that situation, that one of them was Tommy Basham. You know, this is forever known as the Tommy Basham water line, and everybody pays Tommy Basham. Being city, well, the city wasn't paying all these people, you know, like a lot of things, it gets lost. One of them was out there on Mount Harmony, right below your house.
Taylor's property out there.
Yeah, Taylor's. And we piled them all up one time and repealed them all.
Yeah.
And
The theory behind that was it's supposed to attract development.
yeah, it attracted lawsuits.
Yeah, that's what happened. Got it.
I'm just curious if the guy spends money out of his pocket to put in 200, or hell, half a mile of water, whatever, half a mile sewer line.
Talking about sewer though, no.
Yes. And then it's just laying on the ground, and other businesses want to pile in there, they want to tie into that.
Certainly, he has a civil right to recoup that.
Plus he could do a
The city
rebate.
probably doesn't need to be involved in that.
We'll find it out. Yep.
I think he's an interesting.
I think the issue with the law firm was that
I know he is, we've had this
they
conversation.
mandated that they.
I think
Greg said they were supposed to be checking into that, but
They have commission, they have discussed that.
I think the times are on there, he's.
You know,
Dirt's fixing to get moved, I mean, that's who I talked to today, I'll find out, I don't know.
They're fixing to, I mean, I think he's fixing to have to do something.
But did we kind of set up?
we want him over, he is over,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he sold his place.
did it, so he's gotta get over here.
He's got a letter of intent.
So, and that's a chunk of change, if I'm not mistaken, sales tax revenue.
But
Yeah.
how's that, I guess, compared to when Tractor Supply came in and, you know, we ran it and then we gave a, I don't know, like a 90-day moratorium or whatever, and then he didn't.
Well, now, we ran some of it.
We said he built that.
Yeah, we built water, you're talking about the water line.
We built that.
Water line,
Yes.
The water line we built, we
Let
determined
the
that.
folks get in at the cheap rate
Yeah.
before December 1st,
And
after
they
that,
did,
do it else.
and a couple of them did.
Right.
I did that, that's under the water, not under the table.
Is that not something that $972,000 could be spent on? I mean, we said water and sewer.
Infrastructure, right? I
I'm
would
just
hope so.
curious.
They talked about it at the commission meeting, either the last one that maybe you didn't attend or before. It's been, they take a while.
Well, I thought that maybe there was some way we could get it to where it'd go out into this new housing addition.
While we're there,
Yeah, I don't know, 'cause I think there was talk about looping.
kill a couple of birds with one pipe.
That's the only reason I brought it up. is that I was hoping-
I feel like, you know, if you have an industrial park, you kind of, it's kind of similar.
The city.
Yeah.
The only issue with that, and I preached that sermon too, they see, but what I've been told a couple of times is that it's not our industrial park, correct?
Our industrial park anymore,
Yeah. It was, we
Where is it? We don't have one now?
don't have one,
So
which is ridiculous.
what, well, I don't really have to worry about this, but I'm worried about grades. I'm just curious about, I mean, can industry still build out there exclusively, or can I put a house out there now?
Is the zoning part of it,
Still some industrial.
commercial, yeah.
So we still have an industrial. Okay.
It's an area that we don't own property, right?
We all got gate play.
Huh?
You got all got gate.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
It slipped through our fingers like other things.
Last thing we did was sell Eric Edmondson that spot he's got for like $5,000.
And make it, you got a gold mine. It keeps on building. Who builds a 5-story mine? I can't remember. It's a big old building. He must be doing all right. Any questions? Somebody ask Chief Brian something, please. Anything? No? HR, you want to expound? All right, let me make a comment real quick, because I always zip over these things. This is the only one I found in my package. Oh, we got.
On the tower.
Because I was fixing to go, we're gonna get get on to some folks, and I think I still have to get on to, maybe I didn't find it, Senior Citizen Center, no?
Hey,
Is
you
it on
really
there?
done a bunch of money in air conditioning, however.
Yeah, we're fixing to spend 10 grand, or 9,000 something on an air conditioner unit, and you guys blessed them a couple months, or last month. We're gonna have to do it, we're doing it, we've ordered it, have you heard?
I ordered it, he said it's taken a long time getting
Just like
everything,
everything, it's taking a while.
and
so
he'll let us know as soon as he finds out when it can come
We're
in.
struggling through over there, because that's in the kitchen. We've been over there a couple of times, street department went over and helped move, worried that, it wasn't that bad, I smelled it, I went in there.
It was that bad.
There was two giant freezers that got unplugged, full
Yeah.
of,
Chicken.
not in the building, but in
Yeah.
the accessory, if you will.
It was bad.
Pretty nasty, you could smell it as soon as you pulled the part
I
out.
would rather, I can't smell, I like to test.
Well, it's-
There was one lost his breakfast that morning.
I can imagine.
Imagine.
So they ended up assisting, and the county assisted you, right?
Jim Carter went and bought
Did he just
some
talk about it?
chemical that we poured in there,
Okay.
and let it set for a few days, and then we went back.
So they went back and got rid of everything, freezers too.
The county was gonna assist us, but we went into it.
Good job.
So let me get you really quick caught up on what I'm working on, if I may, I'll try to be quick. So Senior Citizen Center, you heard me talk about it, I'm literally, I am gonna do my meeting, I am gonna ask everybody for free stuff like flooring, and you know, stuff like that, and flooring and stuff like
Garage
that.
doors.
Garage door, I don't know if we'll need any garage doors, we might, but flooring for sure. And maybe some, I don't know, so I'm gonna do that. I've been looking at land, we've made unofficial offer without your blessing on some land, I got them down $25,000 here and there, yada, yada, yada. Then a seed was planted in my head by the illustrious Parks Director, Miss Tammy Riley. By the way, we own Bell Park, and we own 19 acres up there that we just acquired, and they're gonna put a splash pad up there, water sewer's gonna be there. Why don't we put a senior citizen right beside it, and the seniors can have lunch and then go out and play in the splash pad, which I'm loving the idea.
Like a cocoon deal.
We own, and then when they get through getting wet in there, then they'll go out and play disc golf.
Right.
So.
We're all gonna be there soon.
Although Mr. Marsh reminds me, as he's supposed to, everybody's doing their job, by the way. Mr. Marsh says to me, you're really worried over $125,000 worth of property when that's not much in the big picture of the scheme, but it is $125,000 that we could put toward air conditioners and walk-in coolers and freezers. All that being said, still working on it. I love the idea. Miss Bell loves the idea. Did you hear what I said? Miss Bell loves the idea. And I asked Mr. Bartlett in lieu of asking Mr. Lejeune, dang it, to look at the situation. They built the one at Dampier, and we toured it. It is a
Taj Mahal.
Taj Mahal of Senior Citizen Center. They designed that. It's got Michael and John all over it, open beams, gorgeous. It's 11,000 square feet. We don't need that because they got 25,000 feet when we get a little less than 10. So I asked Michael, I asked Travis to take the footprint of said Van Buren and place it on 2 lots that we own on Main Street without buying anything that doesn't fit. Obviously, I told him to place it on the property behind the PD, which I love, the dirt work, it fits. And then I said, I don't want that, we don't need that. Give me 7,500 square feet and put that block, that fits very well over there, but you got a park behind on what we own, we're City Hall. Well, we can with permission from Miss Butler. But it's going to look really nice in Bell Park, so I'm asking him now to put it up. He doesn't have to place it, it fits, it's 19 acres of the new property. So there's where I am on that.
What was the price tag on the Van Buren one?
All right, I'm glad you asked. So in 2015, that piece of property, that building had 2 contracts, construction contracts, because it has a added, it was all done at the same time, and you don't know the difference in the 2 buildings. It's not 2 buildings. It has a safe room, which would be cool, and they got a grant from FEMA, and it was a the safe room alone was $700,000, and it's not giant. It doubles as whatever they want it to be. It can be a game room, it can be whatever. The building itself, total, including $700,000 in 2015, was $3.2 million. So I said to Travis, I said, so I can add $1 million to that if we needed one that big? He goes, he's doing this, he goes, yeah, pretty much exactly that now. So I'm guessing 7,500 square feet could be $2 million today.
So any safe room grants available?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I did, yes.
So only for safer.
FEMA, just for the safer. Can't, we do not, we've tried, we're
All
looking.
those gyms at school.
Every gym in Greenwood has one, every builder's multiple. So FEMA may go, you got all you're gonna get, but we're gonna ask. We don't qualify for a whole lot of help from other grants because of our median income. That one in Van Buren, that $3.2 million building is tucked away in a poorer side of town. Right behind it is, I mean, it's there for a reason, so they can walk and stuff to it. So it's awesome. So there's where I am on it. I'm gonna be looking for, I don't know, tile, stuff like that.
Garage doors.
Is it a senior citizen center, or is it like a soup, what do you call it?
It's a senior citizen center. They distribute
Well, you said that people could walk to it.
from that neighborhood.
Yeah, so I'm assuming there's some
It's walkability.
people that aren't senior citizens go over
Oh,
and
no.
build.
No, you gotta be a senior. The people that are walking, you're right, some seniors can't walk, so.
Well, I'm just saying.
No, it's not for just anybody.
It's not all senior.
They have their own.
citizens.
Now, I'm not saying they turn anybody down, because I'm not
Right.
out there. But a senior citizen center under that direction of all that, under area agency on aging and all that is designed for, I think, 60. So I'm qualified, qualified 60 and over. Now, that building, because, and the reason it's $3.2 million is the size, and again, it's just gorgeous, and the amenities that are in there. That's including all the lights and fixtures and furniture and all this stuff. And it has an entrance in the front with a drive-through where you drop off people, and on the other side, there's a drive-through for their homes, their food delivery, which we do that here. We're just gonna be a smaller scale. Lisa will go with I will go with Lisa, and we'll go tour, I've been there already, but we're gonna go look at Mansfield, because I kinda like to look at theirs and go, we need to do a little better. I mean, nothing wrong with it, but we gotta, they have tax. They want some sales tax to pay for that, a PD, a building. Didn't ask, I can ask.
Have you looked at
How many
Charleston?
years?
I ain't looked at Charleston yet. Sir?
I was just wondering
I don't
how many
know.
years.
We'll find out. That's an easy question for Mayor Hirsch. But
You know, it might be an easier sell if you sunset it in 10 years and it was just for that.
I think so. And county is associated with these senior citizen centers, or they are ours. We got a local guy fixed to run for judge who's, I'm gonna pull into this thing, and he's already ready. I think he asked for some information.
He did
today.
this afternoon. Mhm,
I have
got
the
it.
footprint of the existing, what we use now. I mean, I have let me just get off the side. That building where we currently house, where Farmers Bank, that we pay money. By the way, we have had a wonderful deal with Farmers Bank on this building, right? $1, but I don't think we've ever paid them for $1, but free rent, free lease. On the other hand, we keep soaking money into the building that we don't own. So we need to own the building. Again, from Ms. Briley says to me, if we own it, we talked about this, Tom brought it up too, we own it, so when senior citizen folks get through at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we can now rent that building out for parties and events and things that are smaller scale than what she does in the pavilion, and pay the electric bill or whatever. I've talked to a few people about that, and I've got people ready to rent the thing for those events. We just had our 45th. How's that possible? I must have graduated when I was 8. Thank you for doing the thing, though. Kevin doesn't know what he's talking about. He put Greg Stanville on my class. No. Anyway, we just had our 45th in the pavilion. It was a wonderful, but as we all know, the acoustics are horrible. So a smaller scale that we can utilize for those type of things. We paid $300 for it, which we should, $300. I mean, anyway, there's a lot of cool things that can go with this building. Making some money or, recouping some of our money. Call it the GMAC. Getting free tile, stuff like that.
If it's already, if it's gonna be somewhere near where the splash pad is proposed to be, you can definitely do a birthday party indoor, go out.
Absolutely. And the water sewer, by the way, is being, they're paying, the water sewer commission is paying for the, getting it, the water up there and the sewer up there. So don't have to run water sewer anywhere else to some other facility like behind the PD or somewhere. So some things are coming in line other than tile.
It would be foolish not to put the senior citizens center up there.
I totally agree.
About to
And
get
it's
the road
quiet,
built
it's
too.
easy access, it's easy out.
Yeah,
that road's gonna be
Consider it regional, consider it regional
Yeah.
senior citizen center.
5 years.
Maybe it's
Hey,
not
we
It's
just.
more, yeah, I think we can get help from a couple. And I'm not, I think that term is next year, but I'm not putting the judge out to pasture, that's his decision, but I think he's already made it. So even if somebody else doesn't become that, and it's still Judge Hudson, he likes to do things quietly behind the scenes to help. So I'm making an official announcement that they're gonna help us with this, and I don't have that approved.
So he likes to help South Sebastian County quietly, so it will make the voters mad.
Correct, that's correct. Now that we've said that publicly.
I don't care.
The county has helped out on it, and short trails, paving the parking lot at the lake, Boys and Girls Club has a parking lot because of the county. I mean, it's all out there. So if it's nothing more than a parking lot, how much does a parking lot cost on it?
A lot of money.
A lot. So, some things are coming together. And if I had, tile donated and labor. Did I mention that?
Oh,
All right, so that's that. Wanted to let you know what we're doing, what we're trying to do. What do you think, Chad? Anybody got a question? We got through forum.
Thank you. Second.
That's what I was thinking.
Second motion.
I want to go back and look at all this. Yes, it's an awesome.
No, it's all
This is crazy. I live on, I call it. So I'm 6 feet, right? I got those behind me. I'm trying to get he's supposed to, so he's 6 feet. And I don't mind. We'll go 6 feet deep, but wraps out each other. No, he's more this guy. I don't mind. Because he has shells style.
Yeah. Are you gonna be here? Good.